barefoot. Is that still the case? Is he barefoot? Because I know on Facebook somebody posted a picture of these could be his shoes, or is that so he is presumed to be barefoot at this point?
What I can say is that his mom says all of his shoes are accounted for at the house. I'm not going to say that he's barefoot.
All right.
Allegedly!
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Lady Freedom here coming at you with another raw narrative. Here's a brief disclaimer for tonight's show. Let's watch.
That's ignorant! Allegedly, that's ignorant! Ignorant!
Judgment, Alfred.
Chloe, you read my thoughts. You've got the shinin.
You mean shining?
Shh! You wanna get sued?
Judgment, Alfred.
You just use that shin of yours to call me and I'll come a running. But don't be reading my mind between 4 and 5. That's Willie's time.
Hey, yo, boss. I love him when he does that.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is Lady Freedom here coming at you with another raw narrative. It's so good to see all of you guys today. Cece, you made me laugh and thank you guys for being so kind. I understand there was some chat earlier and I can't see all of it, but I did see Seclusion Works, what you said, Seclusion Works. So just letting you know that our hearts are with you and you're always welcome here as anytime you would like or when you're ready. True crime can be really, really tough, guys, and you know, I really don't know what else to say about that. It's a lot, you know. I have to take breaks myself and also watch funny things or heartfelt things that have nothing to do with true crime at all. So I completely understand breaks and everything like that. So, but you guys are such a great community and I'm so grateful to have all of you guys. Same with you, Ann Reynolds. I didn't see everything that you posted, hon, but my heart's with you. And, you know, let me know if you need anything. Sammy G, it's so good to see you. I also saw Megan Els and Linda Hall, Sasha, wait, what? Of course, Seclusion Works, our friend there, and Michelle Scott. Also, Sasha, so good to see you. That's probably like a really weak one. I don't know. I'm a civilian. Civilian sleuth here. Aw, Cece, that's so sweet. Oh, you guys are beautiful. I love you guys. You guys are amazing. And you know, I saw all your kind comments and things like that. So it's very much appreciated. I know that today we are going to talk about hey Peggy, good to see you. Tonight we're going to talk about some pretty sensitive subjects again with the polygraph. So the polygraph back to, and I've done some comparison videos with the polygraph, what was said, what was posted on Facebook. So long story short about that, and big shock. The Proud Feet have come out and done a lot of interviews online. They've also gone on media, social, well, not just social media, but regular mainstream media, right? They've done interviews with reporters that have done articles and things like that, right? High profile case. Hey, Show Poodles. Hey, Cinderella. And so, they've talked a lot, but every time they talk, they seem to get major details mixed up or change their story, right? Because I look at it as changing their story. Some people might say, well, they're upset, so they're mixing things up. But I don't think so, because it seems very deliberate. And I'll show you why I think that. I'll also show you why I think that it's probably unlikely that they were given a very professional polygraph based on the statements that we have. So I have something really special to share with you all tonight. And again, I'm sorry I was late tonight. It still sounds like it's probably still storming. I don't know. I need to watch the weather more. But there was a little bit of lightning earlier. Like I said, here, it seems like summertime is just rains, on and off. And it's nice though, because it cools everything off. So that's the good part. But it'll throw glitches in the show. So I was trying to let it pass by, and hopefully it did. So, but hey, Kiki 2025 True Crime, good to see you. And I want to show you guys a couple of things from last night before we kind of get in to the polygraph stuff. We're going to do that the second half of the show. And of course, I do have this from YouTube when it was posted March 25th, 2024. Right, Nancy Grace posted this interview with the Proud Feet. That'll be something to keep in mind later on, but I'll remind you guys, and I could always repost it. Last night we were talking about the bedroom lights at the Proud Feet being on, Proud Feet residence. It appears that they are on in this photo, right? Because this is from a backyard camera that faces towards the Proud Feet. And we're going to listen about Katie talking about what time she went to bed. We're going to listen to Nancy Grace about what time Katie went to bed. Now, she's told people different stories as well. So we'll kind of recap that as we go along, but just kind of going into last night's, I forgot I had these other ones kind of prepared up for us too. And let me go ahead. I just have shorter clips tonight, so this is just kind of a short clip night. But here's the intro, kind of with Nancy Grace explaining the story, and we have Sheriff Craddock. So we know where Sheriff Craddock's head was on March 25th, around March 25th, right? Before that, I believe actually that was cut from one of the news conferences. I'm sorry, one of the pressers that he did, which were not very many. So, but Nancy Grace plays it here on the show, and we'll listen to that, and then we'll also listen about Katie's bedtime.
February 26, Monday morning, 6 a.m. From everything we can tell, that is the moment that Sebastian's mom and stepdad realize he's gone. For just one moment, imagine that. You go in your child's room where you find your child every single school day morning and you wake them up, but at 6 a.m., he's not there. Can you imagine what must have gone through their minds? First of all, I want you to hear what his bio mom, Katie Proudfoot, says. Listen.
When I woke him up for school, he wasn't there. I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes. About 3 minutes in, give or take, I was on the phone with my husband. I said, I can't find him. He said, what do you mean you can't find him? I said, he's not in the house.
Can't find him. Where is he? And in the last days, we learned that the official law enforcement search is actually scaling back. This as TikTokers and YouTubers are flooding the area, conducting their own searches. Listen to Eric Craddock, Chief Deputy, Sumner County Sheriff's.
Really wanted to come to the community and ask for your help. We need you to search your properties every day, morning and night. If there's a shed or a crawl space or up under your mobile home or a tarp that's in your yard, check it every morning and check it every night. Look for any details that something has been disturbed. If there's a shirt that was there today that wasn't there yesterday, notify us. You can really help us by searching your own property twice a day. Like I said, we're operating under the assumption that Sebastian walked off, and we really need your help to ensure that he is brought home safely.
Okay, guys, so let me take this down really quick and talk with you. So Sheriff Craddock, at that time, he was Chief Deputy Craddock still. So just wanted to throw that out there. But Nancy tells the story. Of course, we all know Sebastian was in his room, according to Katie, went to bed at 9 o'clock at night. And then there was a thud, a noise in his room, which we're going to go over that a little bit later too. And when she went to wake him up on Monday morning for school, he was not in his bedroom. So I do find it odd. She says she took a second and walked through the house, of course. Then she says about 3 minutes later, give or take, she calls Chris, which wouldn't be odd because he also lives with her in the house. But we all know that Chris hadn't been home, according to Chris and Katie, since the 1st of February. Of course, that story changes as well. Very confusing. But nevertheless, they say he was not home that weekend. He was not home that night in particular. So she calls him when he's 3.5 hours away. Again, odd, because what is he going to do from 3.5 hours away? Why would she call him first? Why wouldn't she call 911? So Craddock says that he scaled back the search, right? And that was on day 8. They came out and said that they scaled the search back, but then they were still asking people to check their properties twice a day, morning and night, check any sheds, crawl spaces, under tarps, under your mobile homes, just on your property in general. If there was, a shirt or, even maybe, I don't know, like a little camp setup or something, you never know if there's a bigger property, if there's something that that's out of place there, let them know and let them come check it out, right? So seems fair enough. But they were still operating under the assumption that Sebastian just walked off at this point. Obviously, that is very clear by his statement. So even on May 25th, so we have February, March, April, May, the end of May to the end of February to the end of May, they're still operating under the assumption that Sebastian walked off, right? I mean, and that's no new news. And I believe that it's safe to say that Nancy Grace would have done her due diligence to make sure. But I can tell you, I'm almost positive, and if you guys can think of another instance, let me know. But I'm almost positive they were still operating under that same assumption that he walked off. So, and that's very unfortunate. And then people were talking about last night about the Amber Alert and why they would still have the Amber Alert active if it was somebody that they thought had just walked off. And we kind of discussed that Sebastian's, the different diagnoses that Sebastian had may have contributed to that decision. Hey, Show Poodles and Cinderella. I think I said hi to you guys earlier, but it's good to see you. I kind of went back in the chat a little bit here. Let's see. Hey, Tina Vaughn, good to see you. And Teresa Scott, nice to see you. Oh, oh, wow. Hey, everyone. I never catch a live in the UK, but it's 8 a.m. in Turkey. Oh, that's cool. Here on a holiday. Oh, that's wonderful. I hope you have a great time. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad you're here. Very cool. Yeah, it took a second, Kiki. She says, I took a second. I walked through the house, about a total of, 2 minutes now. She said 2 minutes in another interview before this. Now she's saying it was more like 3 minutes. And, 3 minutes can be quite a while. We even talked about how long 2 minutes could be in terms of the green hoodie waiting near Katie's car. So 3 minutes could be a decent amount of time. Now, it was said that Sebastian likes to hide, so of course I would be looking in all of his hiding places. But if you were to look through that whole entire house, I think it would take a little bit longer. And that's just, something that I'm considering. But either way, she says that 3 minutes later, 6:03, she calls Chris. Which is just weird to call Chris, Yeah, it's well, and some of this stuff will be a little bit comical to me. Kiki says, "Who laughs at this?" Ugh. I'm a little bit into this. This kind of special audio that I want to play for you guys is going to be a little humorous, but I won't spoil it. Yeah, that is really exciting. Cece says, "Teresa, I cannot imagine being in Turkey. How exciting!" Yes, that is so fun. I'd love to travel anywhere, to be honest. Oh, it's beautiful and very hot, Teresa says. Today it was very humid here. Very, very humid. Kiki says in the first video with Chronicles of Oshi, or of Olivia, she slips and almost says she called her husband before she searched. Oh, okay. Just listen to that. Oh, okay, Kiki, thank you. Yeah, and that's the funny thing is they are never consistent with the stories. I guess the one consistency that I can think of off the top of my head is the 9 o'clock bedtime. But that's a little hazy too, even because Katie will say, well, I let him stay up a little bit later. Well, what's a little bit later than usual? You never told us, typically his bedtime is at 8:30, but I gave him an extra 30 minutes. The interaction at the Texas Roadhouse didn't even look like it would kind of warrant extra time or anything like that, because it almost looked like Sebastian was in trouble, in my opinion, so it's kind of odd that she would give him extra time on a Sunday, especially if he wasn't doing like an extra long bedtime routine or a wind down or anything. Like what prompted the extra time? So yes, it is so hot. It's been so hot, huh, Cece? It's just been so hot. Hey, Tori Banks, good to see you. Hey, couponing. First of all, he should have asked for the video also. Yeah, well, and that's another thing too we were talking about last night. Who knows what kind of evidence they pulled in? Because I mean, it took them 2 weeks to go to Warsham's. It took 2 weeks to collect phones. It was all really a procedural failure, in my opinion. And that's another reason I titled this tonight, another procedural fail, or procedure failure, because it is. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much. I mean, and it's unfortunate because there's things they could have done, and we could have been a little bit further in the case, I would think, or at least we could have eliminated some of the things. And then also the lack of transparency. I listened in later on in this interview, and I didn't pull it in or anything, but I might at a different time. Lauren Conlin was complaining, and she was one of the panelists on Nancy's show that day. She was complaining that there was a lack of communication from law enforcement. And Nancy said, to be honest, law enforcement doesn't really owe the public anything, because they're in a pursuit of justice. And, typically I would say, yes, you're right. I mean, and I do think that that is a right way of thinking. I do agree with that way of thinking. But at the same time, for someone who is a reporter and is used to speaking probably with and interviewing different law enforcement agencies and things like that, and people in general, and it struck this person odd. I do think that there's a lot to be said, especially since we know that April 2nd, very shortly after this, 7 days later, give or take, um, law enforcement did the very last presser, back in 2024. So we haven't really received any type of anything from law enforcement, unfortunately, since then. And Tina Von Young says there was glasses and pants found a road over from Sebastian's house. I think Terry Lynn has them. They need to be looked at by the law. Yeah, and I agree. If those items were not turned in, I know what you're talking about, Tina Von Young. Thank you. Yeah, those need to be turned in, absolutely. And law enforcement can do with what they need to. So I agree. And that's, one of the good things about people coming out and helping is that people are going out and helping. But another, a bad thing about that is if they're not turning this stuff in, then how do we know if it's Sebastian's or not? So that's frustrating. Craddock did some back at some point. It was a criminal investigation. Yeah, well, he said that they were going to scale back the search, right, so they could start looking at it from a more investigative standpoint. So in my opinion, I'll just say when back then, I'm sorry guys, my air just kicked on, so you'll hear that. But back then I was really thinking to myself, okay, so does that mean that they don't think that Sebastian is out in the woods somewhere because he would have been outside the radius, right, at that point? Or they felt like they looked enough in the woods to say that he wasn't in the radius that they were searching, right? And of course, we had all of the confusion with the dogs and everything like that. But that was my understanding at first, as I was like, okay, now they're going to start criminally investigating this and trying to find out whether someone did something to Sebastian, because obviously the Amber Alert was issued on the second day. Then I was thinking, okay, there could have been an abduction, but then it just kind of halted after the search. Now they did come out and do another search, of course, at the landfill, and then they did another large scale search closer to when the United Cajun Navy came into the picture. They also did another large scale search right before that presser. So, and they said that they came out and said to the press that, or the media, local media and Nashville syndicates, that they searched the Proudfoot residence 10 times. So, and that was in the first 7 days. Joe Poodle says, I'm wondering why Craddock stated that he would not say that Sebastian was not wearing shoes. It seems odd. Yeah, and every night I play that in the intro, Joe Poodles, and it just really gets me because to me, it indicates a couple of things, especially as I hear it more and more. One thing that came a little bit later was that maybe Craddock wasn't buying Katie's story, right? Because he says, well, the mother is saying this, but I'm not going to say that, right? So he had some reason to believe that maybe that wasn't true, and then I'm not saying he was completely side-eyeing Katie or anything like that, but when he was asked point blank, it was like, well, his mother says that, but I'm not going to say he went barefoot, so it is very odd. It is. Kiki agrees with Tina. Hey, Captain Jules, thanks for being here. Good evening, good evening. Thanks, Kiki. So let's go to this next clip here. My daughter has a big house like Katie's, and it would take at least 3 or 4 minutes to look for someone in her house. Okay, thanks, Tina. Yeah, I mean, and Yeah, I would think so, especially if you're looking in hiding spaces like a closet. It'd take a little bit more time to look. Like I could see running room to room, but if you were taking the time to look in every closet, and that's what Katie said she did, she said, I looked in every closet, that would take a little bit more time. So yeah, I agree. I think it would take more. And, I mean, I don't expect her to say, it took me, if she gave it, let's just put it this way, if she gave like an exact time and she said, it took me 4 minutes and 35 seconds to look, then I would be like side eyeing her even more, because I'd be like, how do you know the exact time? What's this? You obviously pre thought that out. So for her to say 3 minutes, give or take, I can kind of understand. And as I said, 3 minutes may not seem like a terribly long period of time, but it could be. Looking in every closet. Now, I don't know, your adrenaline would be pumping, right? If she legitimately woke up and her son wasn't in his room, then your adrenaline would be going, right? Your heart would start racing. You would be like, running around the house, like she said. You might take the stairs 2 at a time instead of 1 at a time, things like that. So, good to see you, Nancy Fleming. She says 74 in the mountains of Southwest Virginia. Oh, that sounds so nice. Hey, that's a nice summer evening there. Very nice. And second of all, Sasha says Craddock had the lights video within 72 hours. Remember? Yes, he did. He had all of that footage really, really quickly. So I wonder why it took them more time to get out to places like Warsham's and that sort of thing. I'm curious about that. I am. Aw. Web job once. YouTuber. I poured it into Thursday a little bit. Yeah, I was trying to think of something funny for you guys. Oh my goodness. Yeah, especially because we're dealing with Chris tonight and Katie. It's not pretty usually. It's kind of like, riding the train with a bunch of people you don't want to. At the end of the day, you're like, oh God. Good to see you, YouTuber. Of course, I'm not trying to doze off tonight. Oh, I show poodles. I know. Well, we have short clips, so I hope it won't be a long one. Because like last night, we did a really long one. It was 5 hours, and I really need to start putting the chapters in there so you guys, you can go to switch around to which ones you want to watch. But last night's live was really great because we went over Chris's videos, and he had so much good information, like where the cameras were placed in the neighborhood, and of course some of them in there he tells you, this one I'm not 100% sure on, but like one of the neighbors had 7 channels, which means that he had 7 cameras, and of course not all of them, sometimes people have cameras in their houses. I can see one maybe pointing at the door. Other than that, I wouldn't have cameras in my house. I mean, but to each his own. So I'm guessing those were located outside. If there's 7, maybe they have one in the foyer of their house. Kiki says also KP went talking about the neighbors being on vacation, and she says neighbors have information if you turn CC on. I was like, wow. Yeah, well, and see, that was another thing that they were talking about on Nancy Grace, and I know was talked about in many other interviews, was that, the footage was readily given by the neighbors. They wanted to help, right? It's just like anybody, if your neighbors call you and say, oh my gosh, my child's missing, can you look at your cameras, or do you have cameras because my child went missing? Everybody's going to want to help that and say yes, I would think. And it sounds like they did do that. And even the people that were on vacation, because yes, they told that to Chronicles of Olivia, also Nancy Grace, subsequently. So, and Tina Von Young says, hey Shadow, good to see you. Says Craddock acts like he is covering up something. Was Craddock at the poker game on Friday night? The same poker game Katie and Sebastian was at. I wonder about that, because I know that there was there are friendships there. It's also alleged that like Terry Bowersox would have other law enforcement agents come and visit him on his lunch hour. Now, I'm not saying that law enforcement agents aren't just regular people too, right? I mean, they wear many hats, right, so to speak, but they're a regular person. I mean, you could have an uncle that's a police officer, right, and he's going to come over for Sunday dinner, and it's not going to look weird, right? So very quite possibly. I mean, and again, you're going to have friends that are police officers. I mean, I have in the past known police officers who are friends. I have friends that are law enforcement now, especially now that I do true crime. Some people will reach out and let me know, that they're a law enforcement officer and they'd like to help. So, and I appreciate that greatly, because I am not, and I do not have that training, right, or that background. So it's valuable. Just like Kina and Captain Jules, I love having you in the chat, Captain Jules, because you can bring so much more insight to things that, I have no idea about, the dogs especially, because I really want to go back and re-examine everything with the scent. There was a lot in Nancy Grace's interview too with the dogs, and them going back in a barn and all of this, like, really wacko, wackadoo stuff. And that's probably why I had inspiration for this wackadoo live tonight, because I'm dealing with wackies. Cece says, Lady Freedom, I want to know if the poker party happened or not. So do I, Cece. And I'm still trying to figure out if there's any kind of footage out there that I can find where people are talking about it. I know that there were some things that were, I guess they call it dirty delete or something, where they'll delete it out of existence. But it's usually somewhere, like someone usually clips or saves it. I wish that I would have, I mean, I have to be honest. I wasn't thinking the poker party was too big of a deal. I used to get off of work late, and so I'd watch like Poker After Dark, and I learned how to play Texas Hold'em, and I was really interested in it, and maybe it was because it was like kind of like a reality show, with the characters, and they were funny to me or whatever. That's the only thing that was on. But then I started, kind of playing poker with a group of people after I'd get off of work. My boss would have a poker party, right? And so I'm like, well, it's just a poker party, you know what I mean? But I also wonder if there was like different meanings to that too. So I've been really trying to research it. Again, if you guys know anything about it, let me know, to kind of add to what I'm looking for. But I still can't find the clips. Even the things that I've watched in the past, I can't find them anywhere. So I don't know if maybe they're members only, or, Oh, good show, Poodles. Poodles, you're up tonight. Well, I'm glad, because I have late night show tonight. I just didn't want to get kicked off, and have to start a new stream. So I'm an insomniac too, Cece. Oh my gosh, I couldn't get to sleep this morning. It was funny. And then I started watching The Bear has the new season out. It's season 4 on Hulu. And I just love that show. It is my heart. But great show if you guys like, I guess it's a dramedy. It's a comedy, but it's, also got some drama in there. Nancy Fleming says they were threatening everybody. Bowersox is guilty. And yeah, and they haven't stopped, they haven't stopped threatening people. It's really another whole level of weird, in my opinion. You don't, expect to see that kind of stuff. You just don't. Okay, guys, I am going to go to this next little clip here I got for you.
That night, I understand from previous statements you've made that you went to bed around midnight. Is that correct?
It is.
And to you, Mr. Proudfoot, Chris Proudfoot, did you also go to bed at midnight, or before or after?
No, ma'am. We went to bed around the same time, because we were on the phone together.
And
He was not home.
please excuse any of my questions. I'm simply trying to find out more about that night. Do you two sleep in the same bedroom?
He wasn't actually in the home at all that weekend.
You were not home.
No,
okay,
ma'am.
so where were you, Mr. Proudfoot?
I was in Memphis, Tennessee.
How far away is that?
3 hours and 37 minutes from doorstep to doorstep.
And what were you doing in Memphis?
Working.
Where do you work?
I'm currently working, or was working, at the St. Jude Children's Hospital construction project.
Yes, I'm very familiar with St. Jude's. You said that night, Miss Proudfoot, at midnight when you went to bed, what did you do until midnight?
I had been reading a chapter that I needed to, and I had been talking to my husband on the phone. I was falling asleep on him, so that's when he told me it was around midnight. He told me to go ahead and put the dogs up and go to bed, and that's what I did. I got up, put the dogs where they sleep, and then I myself went to bed.
Where do they sleep?
They have a big pen.
A pen, is it inside or outside?
Inside.
Inside.
Okay, guys. So, and we find out that's a lie later too, because they actually told Queen Bee in that chat on the panel that the dogs sleep with Katie when Chris isn't around, right? And he called the dogs traitors, and one of them was supposed to be my dog, but they're traitors. And when I'm home, they sleep in the pen. Hey, Bless, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. I feel there was more cameras that needed turned in. Yeah, I agree, Kiki. And watch, and she says, in my opinion, too, in another chat. But that's another thing too, is that they were saying things. Well, what kind of prompts Nancy Grace, and I have the clip later on, is that they're saying these things and they're waiting to respond, right? And you'll see that later on. It's an easy question, right? If I was to be like, hey, Kiki, do you have a Ring camera? You're going to be like, yes or no right away, because, right, it's not that hard. It's an easy question. It's a very simple thing. Do you have surveillance, or do you have a Ring camera? Do you have any of that, right? Because some people might say, if you say, do you have a Ring doorbell camera? That's different than having, an actual camera, on your garage, say, pointed towards your boat or whatever. So, yeah. We'll also see that. And, and then you can see Nancy's, brain kind of working a little bit. And she's like, okay, she's like, we're going to ask some questions about a polygraph test. And I put that in there too, just so you guys can see it, because it is a little bit, it's telling. So. Oh, really? I didn't know that. Tina says, is that TB? Is it old math? He likes to use math. And may still be on probation. Wow. Thanks, Jules. Thank you. Michelle says, I'm curious if they know people might see in the backyard during 3 a.m. flashlight video, if they could use smoke screen to cover up activity if it was going on. That is curious, Michelle. I mean, it's difficult to see, and I'll pop this one up for you guys too again, because we'll kind of go into this, right? So this is one picture of the backyard, and you can see that there's lights on in the Proudfoot home. So we're basically looking past that porch, and the home that you see back there is the Proudfoot residence, and they do have lights on. This is around 3:06 to 3:07 in the morning, and this is zoomed in. And you can clearly see. And please pay no attention to the all the way over to the right of the screen, you'll see like the like a larger light source. We're more or less looking at the smaller ones in the middle of the screen, right? So like the fire pit, it looks like there's like a fire pit. So directly across from there, that's where we can see. And you can kind of see Katie's little solar lights that she talks about. Like it looks like a little tiny light, that may be, stuck into the ground. Now it does look like there's a silhouette in the, house all the way over the other house that's in view. So, and this is where, I wanted to talk about a few things when it comes to Katie in the her saying that she went to bed at midnight, right? Because your bedroom light should be off at 3 a.m. if you went to bed at midnight. I mean, and so should your dining room. And then, of course, we see it's clicked off at 5 a.m. And we saw that yesterday. So at some point, she did turn the lights off in the home. So I don't know if she took a nap or what she did. Hey, Poppy Love, good to see you. Cece, you are a celebrity, Jules. Yes, Jules is a celebrity for sure. Especially around here, right? Yes, she is so sweet, Sammy says. I don't know when her son passed, but her sadness feels so very fresh, and I'm glad she has YouTube as an outlet. Oh, yes. Thank you, Sammy. You guys have the best hearts. I love that. The canines are the celebrities. Jules is awesome. Cece, the canines are the celebrities. They earned it. I'm just their mama and handler, blonde lady who spoils them with love and toys and treats. Aw, Jules, that's so cool. They're adorable too. Oh my gosh. I bet you it's so hard like when you're out with them, because I bet everybody just wants to pet them and love on them, and oh my goodness. Cece says, me too, Sammy G. I feel for Anne. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. That's probably a personal conversation. I was watching Hulu, Jules. I was. I didn't know the new season was out yet. I knew it was coming out, and so I was like, oh, I better go, like, kind of watch the episodes. So I've been watching them here and there, but then I look, I'm like, oh, season 4 has been out since June. I'm like, where have I been? So, but those are the little things that I do to kind of keep my own sanity, with everything. So, hey, Sandy, good to see you. Sandy says, in my opinion, I think that poker party was a big deal. Well, yes, Sandy, thank you for bringing me back to that, because that's what I was going to say. Even though I've been to my fair share of poker nights or poker parties, right? I do think that the reason, well, I'll just say, I do think that there may be something to the poker party, since we haven't found Sebastian, and it just seems very odd that we still don't know whether Chris was actually in the area or not. I mean, I believe Silver's on the scene. He's alleging that Chris, would regularly take off from Thursday night and then, spend the weekend. Right. And if there was a poker party with everybody, his friends and family, why wouldn't he be there? And maybe they thought because it was a public place where there was a lot of people that, Sebastian would be off, in another area, and then he could be there. So I do think so, Sandy. And, based on what I've heard about it too, it just seems like there was something that may have happened that night. And I do think that there's more to it now than I did initially. Oh, thank you, Melly Cat, for gifting a Lady Freedom membership. And if you got a membership to the Dragon Tribe, please say thank you to Melly Cat. That was so sweet, Melly Cat. I appreciate that so much. Oh, and it looks like Kiki sent a super chat. She says, do you remember when CP and KP allegedly was seen in Mississippi? Yes, I do. I do remember that. I do. Thanks, Kiki, so much for that super sticker too, or super chat rather. Yes, and that part's weird too, because they kind of squirm around when Nancy Grace is asking them questions about, like, where did Chris live when he was away, and that sort of thing. And it just makes me wonder, especially that they would go there together. We don't even know if his camper was searched properly or anything like that, because that camper has always bothered me as well. Just absolutely strange. Just absolutely strange. Show Poodle says, Michelle, good to see you. Looks like someone's RV. Oh, okay. Oh, maybe so. And that night, Katie says, well, and she said it to Duchess too, because I did go back and watch Bullhorn Betty's video too, and she was playing Duchess for the missing, and that was 7 days in till Sebastian's disappearance, right? They went on Duchess because Duchess supposedly knows Katie's family member, and the family member reached out for help to Duchess, and they agreed to go on Duchess. They spoke to Duchess before, and she did a recorded interview, but then they chose to come up on her panel. So very interesting, right? Well, that's when we hear Katie tell the first lie to us about midnight, right? She says, I went to bed around midnight. And then, Duchess says, you had told me that you went to bed around midnight. And then Katie says, midnight. And, like she's crying, midnight. And then Katie says to Nancy Grace in this interview, Nancy says, you went to bed around midnight, correct? And then, is that correct? And Katie says it is correct. So she lies to Nancy Grace. She also says asks Chris Proudfoot what time he went to bed that night. And he tells Nancy Grace that they went to bed around the same time because they were on the phone together, right? And so the story is that Katie was talking on the phone with Chris. She was reading a chapter of her book for school, and she was falling asleep on the couch. So Chris said, put the dogs up and go to bed. And Katie says, that's what I did. Right? So again, they're telling Nancy Grace that once they got he's saying, once I got off the phone with Katie, I went to bed as well. And that was around midnight. But then why do we have lights on at 3:06? And I mean, you can clearly see that they're on. I believe Katie's bedroom is the one that you can see very faint, the lights on, like one of the shutters isn't closed. But then the other one, you can really see where it is illuminated. Hey, Bo, good to see you. So, I mean, it is what it is. And that this is, a photograph that was put out by their PI. And then, of course, Nancy Grace goes into asking Chris, how far away do you work? And he tells her 3 hours and 37 minutes, doorstep to doorstep. And she says, where do you work? And he says, St. Jude's, right? The construction site. So, and I mean, we know that part at least to be true. I thought it was weird after Sebastian disappeared, then they change the security system. I agree, Michelle, especially because Katie worked for Brinks, right? So you would think she would already have that all together. But we'll see here when she's asked about it, here coming up, that she doesn't have a good answer at all for any of it, really. I mean, she basically pauses for quite a while before she answers, as if she really has to think about it, as if she's making sure that she's not answering too hastily, that way she doesn't slip up. And even Nina recalls them having cameras before, you know. Hey, KJ Mac, good to see you. Oh, let me see what Shapoodle said here. What is strange is that the police let him leave for 24 hours to retrieve the camper. Yeah, I agree, Shapoodles. It is weird, isn't it? It's very weird. And he said, we went to go get the camper when he was talking about it. And he's like, well, not we, meaning me and Katie, but me. And I do believe that he did go retrieve the camper with someone, just not Katie. And like I said, you guys have a treat later, because we're going to hear something a little bit later about, you know, what Katie may have been doing during that time period. Allegedly, of course. Tina says Chris could not be around Sebastian due to 4 reports to child services of abuse by teachers. There's 5 reports by child services now, a report on Sebastian going missing. Oh my goodness. Yes, Tina. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so sad, right? Because I truly believe that to be true. I don't think that he was allowed to be around Sebastian. I think they had told Katie, look, you know, you are not helping the situation, right? Sorry, guys. You are not helping the situation. You are putting Sebastian in danger, right? You're leaving him in a toxic environment, that sort of thing. And that too is detrimental to Sebastian. And so, you know, they didn't want her doing that, you know, at all. Just really a great point. Oh yes, Cece, I know. And I'm gonna do a dragon party tomorrow night for the 3K. Yes, I'm so excited about that. You guys are so awesome. Oh man, I was really, really, really happy to see that. So yeah, thank you, Cece. I got something cool planned for you guys. Bless says, same Cece, I assume the handler and a dog may be working, so hands off, but it's hard not to want to pet or play with the dog. Also, I'm in awe of Captain Jules. Yes, I know. I am too. I think that is so neat. I love how they could just find things so fast, and it's just amazing. It's amazing. I agree. RV should have been checked. Yeah, Michelle, absolutely. Yeah, and we don't know that it was. I mean, it just seems like they didn't properly. And there's a couple of things later on that Nancy asks about that as well, that I wanted to play for you guys, because, you know, for them not to do any of that is very odd, you know, in terms of taking any evidence from Sebastian's room whatsoever. I mean, it's odd, you know. Of course you're not going to have evidence if you don't take any evidence. That may be the reason why you don't have any evidence. You know, sorry, it's just kind of the way it goes, right? Sammy says, well, they were saying at the campground in Mississippi, so I think they've been there a bunch of different times. Yeah, so it's been said that they were staying at, is the Yogi Bear campground is the one in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and again, it's weird that they would go and stay at a Yogi Bear campground where it's a family-friendly place without their son. And then they never go and visit Chris ever. That's weird. Because he camps and you know, he's glamping, you know, he's not camping, he's glamping. That's a nice camper that they have, Fifth Wheel, excuse me. Very strange, says Sammy to show poodles. I've got to go to bed. Sorry, guys. Oh, Kiki, yeah, just watch the replay, girl. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. KJ Max says, exactly, show poodles. There's a lot of time to hide or destroy evidence. A great way to create no evidence, as CP so often says. Exactly. And they could have cleared their phones up. I'm thinking they use burner phones. I really do believe that, KJ Mac. That is such a great point. Yeah, such a long time and a great way to create no evidence by wiping all the evidence. And, we have talked about it here too, sometimes, and if it's a good investigator that really cares and really wants to get to the bottom of things, they realize that the lack of evidence is evidence in and of itself that someone has done something. And I always like to use a steering wheel as or a gear shift as a good example. If there's a lack of fingerprints from the owner of the vehicle that drives that vehicle every day on the gear shift and on the steering wheel of a vehicle, say, that's an indication that someone has cleaned that up, and that's why there's no fingerprints, right? Because there should at least be your fingerprints there. If there's not, that says a lot, Yes, Jules does have many fans, CC. Yes. Well, and oh my goodness, and you guys whack those trolls anytime. Feel free. Feel free. Michelle says, I thought it was weird that after Sebastian disappeared, then they changed the security system. Oh, sorry, I already read that one. Yeah, absolutely weird. Aw, thanks, Bo. Poppy Love says, who have the neighbors said they thought were threatening them? Could they identify who? I don't think they said it publicly, but I could be wrong. Maybe just that they were. Excuse me. Showpoodle says LE should have had surveillance on him. Oh, I agree. I've always felt like they should have wrapped this up very quickly. Yeah, Showpoodles, they should have at least done some sort of a surveillance. If anything, put a tracker or something, bugged his truck, something. They did it with Brian Laundrie. I mean, they tried. I mean, they kind of failed on that surveillance on that end. But hey, little Miss Sharon. But so I mean, even when they do things, sometimes they don't always do the best job. But at least they tried. KJ Max says, I want to think that they did, but I don't. I have trust that they do. Yeah, I agree, KJ Mac. Michelle says, for somebody that wasn't there that night, he sure jumps on all these questions. He sure does. He really does. He can't wait to either. It's like he pounces on the damn questions. I agree. Carla, good to see you, Carla. It's raining here too. I don't know if you guys could hear the little pitter patter, but yes. Well, be careful. I know there's flooding everywhere. I even saw some up by Cicero in Chicago. I was like, what? Showpoodle says, I don't think that they did, just my opinion. I don't think so either. That's probably why they have the lack of evidence, Oh, hey, Joyce. Joyce, thanks for being here. Says, hey, girl, missed your face. I have a Belgian mixed shepherd and a full-blood shepherd. They would bark, and that's one reason I have them. And the other is we introduce them only to who comes into their house. Well, that's so true, Joyce. That's a great part about any dogs, especially the little ones will yap really quickly, right? But yeah, if anybody is out around, my dog will bark, and he's a little beagle, and he will just let me know. And if I tell him, hey, be quiet, sometimes he'll look at me and be like, no, someone's out there, and so I know that he's being serious, because I'll be like, calm down, Because he's loud. He's got like a bell on him. My Belgium smells everything. Aw, how sweet. Sounds so pretty too. I love dogs. Hey, Laura. Good to see you, Laura Arnold. Thank you so much. How sweet of you. That is so sweet of you. Michelle says, wonder if records of CPS findings was reported as possible evidence of home environment. You know, I would hope so. And I would hope that they would really strongly consider that, you know, especially when and if they consider charges, because I believe that I just really believe that they need to be held accountable for what happened. You know, I am glad that I've never actually read those reports, right? But I do remember what Seth said about them, and he said that if any of us did read them, then it would make it hard to sleep at night. And you know, we're all very invested and attached to Sebastian. I know I can feel it from you guys. And I would just hate to hear any of that. It would just break my heart into a million pieces, you know, and it would piss me off. It already does piss me off just knowing that much, right? So I don't see how the police overlook something like that, because I would think that we would be kind of on the same team, right? Wanting justice for people who don't have a voice or whatever, who are missing, right? Because they can't speak for themselves. I would really hope that they would find it, you know, within their hearts to acknowledge that and understand that Sebastian needs justice for that. You know, again, in this Nancy Grace interview, and I've played it, you know, and I've done the comparisons and I've slowed it down and I've, you know, raised up the volume for you to hear Katie. I mean, she lies right on Sebastian. She lies on him. And she says, that happened a long time ago. No, it didn't. It didn't. And it didn't only happen once. It didn't. I'm sorry. It didn't. It didn't only happen once. And I don't know if she was participating in, you know, the physical corporal punishment, if you will, because she might have been. She very well could have been. But either way, she was allowing for her brute of a husband to put hands on her son. And to me, she's just as bad as he is for allowing it. Carla says, I want to say how funny it was. The several creators are posting that they want any law enforcement to investigate At Night as soon as Dog posted for someone else to take over the case. Critic is nervous. Really? I didn't see that, Carla. You know, let them investigate At Night. Like, what are they going to find? I don't think they would find anything, but, you know, I might be wrong. Maybe we'd all be shocked, but I don't think so. I think they're just, like you said, grasping, and they're probably worried. You know, sometimes the ones that are Joyce. So sometimes the ones that are so loud, and especially when they know they're being looked at, you know, it shows guilt, in my opinion. So that doesn't surprise me. But thank you for sharing that, because I didn't know that. I mean, you know, I think that At Night has done really above and beyond. Like I said, I never expected them to pull in Summer and advocate for her the way that they have. And, you know, I'm so grateful. Cece says, we have got to grow this channel. It's awesome. Thank you, Cece. Yes. Oh, YouTuber says, notice the Pussyfoots didn't ask Nancy Grace if they could have their hands on screen. Nancy, we're going to need to just only do the, you know, only hands. Oh my goodness. There is something going on with those two identical campers. Oh, okay. Yeah. I think so too. And see, they switched them. I can't remember, Cece, and maybe you can remember, like, when did they switch them, apparently? Because I know it looked like there were different ones, and I don't remember if it was before this or after this interview. And this was like March 25th, 2024. So I wonder. I think there's something going on with the identical campers. I think they could have switched them out and said, here, law enforcement, go ahead and search this one. You know, again, if it was heavy with someone else's DNA, you know, but I don't know that they even took the time, you know. Bo. Okay, guys, I'm going to play this next clip. This is just a really tiny one, actually, too. Here we go.
Okay, so his bedroom is away from Faith's bedroom and away from your master bedroom. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Sebastian's room on a top floor or a ground level?
We have a ranch-style house. It's a 1.5 story, so everything's flat, and then you have the bonus room above the garage.
Okay, so his is on ground floor, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, guys, so I'm just wanting to, you know, let you know what they said about where their bedroom's located, because again, from this view, you can see that there are lights on in the house, and that's the side of the house that Katie, her bedroom is on. You know, it's located on the other end of the house. And then again, here's a closer view of it. And there's also, it appears to be maybe the kitchen light. Or perhaps it was a bathroom. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do know that Katie's bedroom window is the smaller light source that you kind of see. It kind of looks like 2 dots from far away. And feel free to like zoom in. I haven't done anything to enhance this photo at all. This is just a screenshot from Chris's live. Just to kind of like let you guys know. But I just thought that was really interesting that they're saying, yep, that's where our bedroom is. This is the light that was on that night at 3:06 in the morning. But Katie said she went to bed at midnight. So what was she doing? You know, what was she doing? It's very odd. That's right. Little Miss Sharon says, don't call it the camper. Don't call it a camper. CP calls it a fifth wheeler. Yeah, that's right. It's a fifth wheel. It's a fifth wheel, he says. Yeah. Pardon me. Oh my gosh. And don't you talk about his truck now. Don't you talk about his truck. He doesn't know what year it is. That was another weird thing, because I'm sorry, but guys know. They know what year their vehicle is. And I think everybody does, especially because, you know, for insurance, you have to put the make, model, and, you know, whatever year of your vehicle, and things like that. So yeah, I think so too. YouTuber says probably, and I think Edgar is getting nervous too. I think so. I think he's been nervous for a while. You know, he was searching the Canada gigs. You know, I don't know if he was planning on leaving Katie in Tennessee and he was going to go up to Canada for a little while. I don't know. That's right. My truck. Not my truck, Jules. Not my truck. Boy, he flew up on that panel quick. Oh, boy. Did he ever. It's like the parents, any of that. His man card, CC. Tina Vaughn says there is a guy that that called into JLR show that worked with Chris and Terry. This guy said that Chris and Terry talked bad about Sebastian. You know, we played a clip, Tina. Thanks for bringing that up. I did not listen to that one on JLR, but I do remember J is for Justice on her channel. A man called in that was allegedly a coworker of Terry's, a former coworker of his, and he said the same thing. He said he talked bad about Sebastian, that he'd come in talking bad about his wife. I mean, just everybody, you know, like a smear campaign, and just, you know, how horrible they all were, you know, and that he's going to leave. And I mean, and then also it was alleged that he would brag about how he had people that would get things done for him, in terms of, you know, when it came to Chris's exes and things like that, which is very weird. Edgar doesn't have a man card. He needs one. He's got the mullet card. Teresa Scott, good to see you. Don't talk about my mama's truck. The fifth wheel. Teresa, exactly. Yeah, don't talk about any of those subjects, or or he's flying up on your panel, yelling at you about what you talk about on your show. Oh, that is so weird, Jules. I don't understand that. That is so weird. He has a mama card. He plays the mama card. Oh man. Yeah, he plays the Cruella de Vil card, right? Here she is. Here she comes. Better watch out. His sister seems like she's pretty spicy too herself. I mean, I'm not saying that she shouldn't be. I'm just, I was listening to those clips, and Molly Golightly said, when she said, nice to meet you, she says that remains to be seen. I was like, damn. He won't, that's the worst. Jules says he won't let Katie do interviews on her own either. The only one she's ever been able to do alone was the Reels interview. That was the only solo interview. And, that was it. And other than that, he's always right there. And it's so weird. And I understand that maybe some people would say, well, where's his stepdad? If he doesn't show, people could misconstrue that. And I get that. And I get that people might be upset about that or think, but if he wasn't there and he hadn't been there for the entire month, like they say, then he would have limited knowledge, in my opinion, especially about actually being there. When it comes to the night in question, right? So Katie has those answers, or, possibly he does too. Now, they did say they talked on the phone a lot, and with FaceTime, I mean, you could feel pretty connected with FaceTime. If you FaceTime people, I could see that. But still, it wouldn't be like being there. YouTuber Mommy Socks has a Musty Hutch card. That's hilarious. Be proud of what your answers are, Jules, no matter if it's about your dogs or you. That's right. Yeah, absolutely, Cece. Yes. Jules, CC read my mind. Very hard sometimes, but we're glad you're here tonight. Yes. Oh yeah, I'm so glad to have all of you guys here. Show Poodles, it to me is a big red flag that they started targeting at night to be investigated after his post on how Craddock is not checking into tips and treatment of Seth. I think they are worried. Well, and they should be, they really should be worried. And, I don't want to intimidate a law enforcement officer. And again, I mean, they're not the ones that hurt Sebastian, right? They're not the ones that kidnapped him. I totally get that. But I mean, what have they been doing? It feels like he's sitting on his duff, and the funniest thing was that Bullhorn Betty was saying, hey, she was talking to Brandon Carter. She said, Brandon Carter, Sebastian is not in your office. Sheriff Craddock, Sebastian's not in your office either. You guys got to get off your tushies and go find him. You know what I mean? I mean, I can't say that any better. I've tried. I've thought about it, but no, Jules, I don't think so. I don't think so. But yeah, that she, oh gosh, she had me rolling with that. I was like, how true is that? I was clapping. I was like, Hercules, Hercules. You know, I was super excited when she said that because I'm like, you know, that's so true. What are they doing? Looking under their desk every morning for Sebastian, praying he's gonna be there? I mean, come on, you guys gotta do better than that, you know? It's just like, okay, guys, so give me 1 second here and we'll watch this next clip. Oh yeah, because this one's like a 4-minute. Okay, so here we go.
That morning, was there any sign of a break-in through a window, a front door, a back door, a sliding glass door, anything at all?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no sign of forced entry. Was anything taken from the home at all?
Not that we could find anything. We couldn't find anything missing.
I want to circle back to Sebastian's shoes regarding if anything was missing. Do you have a burglar alarm?
No, ma'am.
Do you have a Ring doorbell cam?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Have the two of you taken a polygraph?
I have.
I have not.
Would you be willing to?
I've offered and volunteered on many occasions to take a polygraph, and I was told directly by law enforcement because of my whereabouts, I did not need one.
I understand. Ms. Proudfoot, did you pass your polygraph?
I did.
Those questions out of the way.
Miss Grace, could I jump in for something?
Yes, please. And I want to follow up with a question regarding Miss Proudfoot's polygraph. But please, Lauren, jump in. Everybody on the panel, now is the time to ask the Proudfoots any question that may shed light on what has happened to Sebastian. We are not in a judging arena. We are in a fact-finding arena. We can then assimilate the facts and make deductions. Please jump in. I want to go back to Katie Proudfoot. This is Sebastian's biological mother, Miss Proudfoot. What questions were you asked during your polygraph?
I was asked if I knew where my son was. I was asked if I hurt him. I was asked if I had hurt someone, among a few other questions.
And Mr. Proudfoot, you have volunteered to take a poly?
Yes, ma'am.
If I were to set up a poly for you, would you take it?
Name the place and time, ma'am. I'll be there.
Tell me some, hey, give us some time, we'll put it together. Cool. April 9th, I think, was the date. It was a Tuesday. We kept it very quiet. The FBI prolificer, there's TBIs, the FBI, I think they're all the same, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know how those certifications work, but I know what you're talking about.
So, my wife got a polygraph by day 2 or day 3 of the investigation.
Right, yeah.
She passed. No problem. I get my polygraph test. We keep it quiet. The lady who did hers cannot do mine because we said we don't want any chance of somebody saying it was a biased opinion type situation. Her boss, and the other prolificer, all three come together, make my questions.
Right.
My wife got 5, and I got 13 fucking questions.
Oh.
I'm like, really? I'm whatever. I don't give a shit.
Oh, yeah.
So I go and take my polygraph test, and I passed. Steph, on the other hand, goes and takes a fucking polygraph test with Nancy Grace, knowing that motherfucker's gonna fail. He falls asleep.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. They said, well, it's inconclusive. because he keeps falling asleep.
How does that even happen?
Okay, guys. So that was courtesy of Jules there, and that was Chris Prophet. And I'm sorry, it just cracks me up when he says, "Oh, she only got 5 questions, and I got 13 effing questions," and it's like, well, you know what? Maybe they didn't like you, or something. No, I have other theories than they just didn't like him. But he said that he went Tuesday, April 9th, 2024, for this polygraph, and I didn't get a chance to look to see if that was even, plausible. So let's see. Okay, April 9th was in fact a Tuesday. So the lie detector test determines that was the truth, right? Calendar. So, he's being honest there. So that's a good thing, right? But he is kind of hazy on whether it was the FBI or a TBI polygrapher. Either way, he says that they were very much involved, which is so odd. I mean, I don't know what this is where I think he starts lying, because now he's like bragging about how he was in on the process, like that he knows how they came up with the questions, and the lady who did Katie's wasn't going to do his polygraph because they didn't want anybody to think that there was anything sketchy about that. But he does indicate that Katie took her polygraph test 3 days after Sebastian went missing and that she passed it. But here's a big red flag. He states that Katie was only given 5 questions, right? Only 5 questions. So typically when you take a polygraph exam, the polygrapher will give you a series of questions establishing a baseline. So they ask you questions that they already know the answers to and give you questions like, what's your name? And different questions like that, right? So I did a little bit of research. Again, a polygraph test is going to indicate whether you're being deceptive or truthful, right? So there may be some questions that you're deceptive on, and there may be some questions that you are truthful on. And I thought I already had this pulled up, so I'll say Tennessee Bureau of Investigations polygraph process. Right, guys, because I'm not the expert. I'm just kind of trying to present this over. And thank you so much, Jules, for this, because this is really a great insight as to what Chris's perception of this all is. And of course, he's speaking for Katie, but Katie does indicate to Nancy Grace that she was asked some questions like, did she hurt Sebastian? Did she do something to Sebastian? So it says here, and this is just, what I spoke into Google. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigations utilizes polygraph exams as part of their process for positions like special agents and forensic scientists. These examinations are also used in criminal investigations. Okay, by some law enforcement agencies in Tennessee, such as Williamson County Sheriff's Office, to support their work in verifying statements and identifying leads through the results, and though the results are not admissible in court, right? And we all know that too. It's basically, again, to just find out whether this person is being truthful or whether they're being deceptive, right? And that can really indicate a lot to law enforcement. So the TBI polygraph process details the polygraph unit. So the TBI established its polygraph unit. It's still young in 2019. previously housed within the Field Investigation Unit. The purpose of the polygraph is for TBI, the special agent with a TBI, forensic scientist positions, and polygraphs is also part of an intense background investigation. So they use those in order to investigate who they're hiring, right? But in criminal investigations, it serves as a tool for collecting information, but not as evidence in court. So the examiner from the TBI will be a certified professional, right? They have training in it. And Tennessee regulates individuals and companies offering polygraph services through private investigation and polygraph programs within the commissioner-run detection services licensing program. If you're going to undergo a TBI polygraph, you should aim for a good night's sleep, maintain your usual routine, including medications, eat well, and stay hydrated. You should also be prepared to answer questions honestly and be direct, as overthinking or trying to beat the test can negatively impact the results, right? And it's usually a yes or no answer. They're not going to sit there and ask you a question that you're going to have to explain, right? It's going to be like, were you in the area of Stafford Court on February 26, 2024? That's a yes or no. There's no explanation needed. It's just yes or no. Did you hurt your son? Yes or no, right? And if you're sitting there thinking about it, that can change, your heart rate, that sort of thing. And that's how they kind of score that, right? Without me being an expert. The questions will be reviewed with you before the examination begins and during the actual test. The questions are typically straightforward yes or no questions directly related to the purpose of the exam, right? So they're not trying to trick you by any means. They want to be fully transparent, but I highly doubt that Chris himself was being told how they came up with the questions, and that's what he indicated in the audio. And if you guys want me to play it again, I will too. Just let me know. Where was I here? Okay, physiological monitoring. So the polygraph instrument will record your cardiovascular pattern, right? So your heart, respiratory or breathing patterns, and electrodermal or galvanic skin response, right? And that's why they hook you up to the different, they put something around your waist. I don't know the technical terms for all of this, but you're hooked up to it, right? So they can monitor these responses. Post-test phase, the examiner will analyze the collected data and may discuss the results with you, addressing any inconsistencies, right? So there should be a follow-up, especially if there was deception detected, right? Consideration, honesty, medical conditions, and it's not admissible in court. So just something interesting I wanted to share with you that I read earlier about how the process is supposed to go. So I highly doubt that there was only 5 questions asked. And of course, Katie mentioned a couple, and she said among other questions. So, I would say it was safe. Now, of course, with Chris being the narcissist that he is, in my opinion, him being pissed off about getting 13 questions is hilarious. But it could have been because he was out of town, right? So there were a little bit more verifications, and perhaps he was counting the baseline questions, because they're always going to do that. They're going to ask you a series of questions to make sure it's kind of like any experiment where you have the control group, right? So, and I just wanted to pop this back up here. Little Miss Sharon, this is such a great catch here. What? Nothing missing? Apparently there was a tiny little light missing. Yes, Katie told all of us that Sebastian did take his keychain flashlight with him. But she forgot that, right? She forgot that little detail with Nancy. Great catch, Little Miss Sharon. Thank you. Yeah, such a great catch. Hey, Linda D. Oh, and one teenager. Yes. Yeah. Don't forget Sebastian. He's definitely missing. Oh Lord, right? BS. Oh, the BS. Bo. Oh my. And it is. And, they expect us to believe all of this stuff, but it's a major red flag. Also, I wanted to discuss the statement about Seth, right? Because Nancy Grace had him on the show. She had her trusted polygrapher who was an actual FBI polygrapher. So we do, with Seth, we get the full transparency, right? We get the full picture every time. He will say, yes, I did fall asleep. But again, when we're reading about how they even administer them at a state level, they're saying make sure you get a good night's sleep, right? Because you're going to be in an environment where they're trying to make sure you're relaxed, right? So there's nothing that can really fudge the results. So the fact that he was dog-ass tired from searching for his son, Proudfoot, sit the fuck down. Like, seriously, stop. And then also he talks about how he knew he was going to fail the MFer. Again, why would he think that? Yeah. Cece says, Buzz. No chance, Edgar. You lied to Nancy Grace. He sure did. And yeah, name the place and time, ma'am, and I'll be there. It's like, again, sit down. Linda D says, in my opinion, I think they know where he is, in my opinion. Oh, I absolutely do too. And now there are ways to skate the polygraph test, right? That's why they're not admissible in court, because it's not 100% accurate, right? But it does help to understand whether someone may or may not be telling the truth. And you also have those physiological responses. Those are something that we can't really help, right? It's just something that naturally occurs. So those things are hard to hide, but there's ways around it, Joy says she didn't ask all the right questions. She was the only one left with her child, and she didn't answer for that. Right. Well, and that's the thing, she does state the questions, or some of them, that she recalls being asked. But, again, if they only asked her 5 questions legitimately, I feel like they did not do an adequate job, if that's the truth. Even at 13 questions, I don't know. Maybe that would be adequate. 13 is actually quite a bit of questions, especially if we consider maybe the baseline might only take maybe 3 to 4 questions to establish, and then moving, forward. This makes me so mad, Bo says. Yeah, it is. It's maddening. It's maddening. And poor Jules is sitting there just like, yeah, because he's like bragging, no, you have a great voice, Jules. 13, poor baby. Little Miss Sharon, I crack up every single time I hear that, because he's over there like complaining, like, oh, poor me, and look at Katie, he's like a child, he's like, well, she only got this many. And like, any of us who've been in a narcissistic relationship can really, I'm sure, relate with this, right? And that may be why you guys are getting mad, right? Because it's like, they're always in competition with you, and it's the weirdest thing, because they shouldn't be, because it should be like an equal partnership, and they should be rooting you on, and they should be proud of you and wanting you to do well. But instead, they're always looking over at you like, you got more popsicles than I did, and it's like, shut up, you know what I mean? Pop mama's titty out of your mouth and shut up, you big baby. Hey, C. Taylor, good night. Well, Katie only got 5 questions, and they asked me 13, and it just was not fair. Oh, gee whiz. Please, Bo says, please just shut up, Edgar. Oh, Lord. He's horrible. Jules says, surprise. I was No, the Polly, you guys are thinking we've heard this a million times, right? Until until in pops Edgar and he's telling some, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm going to tell the truth, and facts are important. The truth is important to me. Edgar told the truth. Look at him. I mean, he deserves a cookie for that, right? Because if we don't, watch out. But, you know, he said April 9th, it was a Tuesday. I looked it up. There, sure as shit, it was a Tuesday. Katie should have had more than 5. I would think so, Carla, right? Like at least a couple of questions beforehand. They really didn't do an in-depth investigation now. At 5 questions, that doesn't sound very in-depth. I'm trying to think back, you know, one of the most famous polygraphs that I've remembered seeing in a really high profile case would have been Chris Watts. Now that polygrapher, ooh, she was like telling him, like, guess what? you know, someone in this room knows the truth, but pretty soon we're all going to know the truth, right? And like, she really, I mean, man, she needs to interrogate Katie. I'm just saying, you know, because she really put the heat on. And, you know, Chris is over there, you know, because he's guilty. Yeah, they're not. Well, and I think it's because people can skate them. And then also I think that sometimes, especially like if you have anxiety like that's the one thing that I think would be difficult for me personally to take a test like that, is because I would probably be so anxious that they'd probably be like, okay, we're going to need you to calm down because like your heart rate is going through the roof, right? And we haven't even started, you know? And so I think that's probably one of the reasons. And then also because I think people can just, you know, there's certain ways, because it's all about when they establish that baseline, right? So like they're going to establish my baseline is like my heart's already going fucking bonkers, right? But then, you know, if it goes even worse, then, you know, that's going to be, you know, normal for me, but then it's going to indicate that I'm having that physiological response, you know, if that makes sense. Oh, and CP, you are not the father, Bo. That's great. And the lie detector test determined that was a lie. They could be taken Valium and passed. Well, and yeah, that's a good point, Carla. So yeah, like if you've taken medications, that's why the instructions, they talk about how if you're going to go in for the polygraph, make sure you're taking your regular medications. That's a great point, because if you take something that you're not used to, then you're going to be like super mellow, especially a Valium. I mean, those are like, you know. Oh, I know. Oh, YouTuber. Oh, I know. How dare he mock Seth? He has caused Seth so much anguish and pain. Yeah, and blaming him for everything. Like he's always blaming Seth for this, blaming him. Oh, look what he did here. Look what he did there. It's like, look at you though. It's your house. I would side-eye Seth for sure if Sebastian went missing from his house. But something tells me that Seth would feel incredibly guilty about that, about him going missing from his house. And let's not forget, I mean, guys, I'm just being honest here. I'm just saying what the facts that as in the way that I know them to be. But if Sebastian was able to come home from school, get off the bus and stay by himself and no one nabbed him up then, right? And let's be honest, he might have been sneaking to get online, you know, you never know. And if he did, he's a kid. You know, so I'm not throwing shade at Sebastian. I'm just saying that, you know, when kids are latchkey kids, you know, I mean, there might be things that you're going to try to pull off when mom and dad aren't going to be there. I mean, I was a latchkey kid too, but I was the oldest and I had a younger brother and stuff. But either way, I'm just saying that there could have been times where he was doing something that they didn't know about. Also, I find it to be even more odd that when he was at Seth's house, allegedly, according to Seth, there were overnight shifts that Seth was working and Sebastian was there all night by himself. And again, no one nabbed him up. He didn't take the opportunity to run away. He didn't have a wild party at the house while Seth was gone and clean it up before Seth got home. I mean, I don't think he did. But I mean, it's odd that Katie is in the house with him and he just poof disappears. It's, you know, but something tells me if that happened under Seth's watch, we would see something completely different. Jules says, I literally just LOL'd because I just realized he said I passed. Did you hear how he said, mm-hmm, or how I said, mm-hmm? Yes. Yes. Jules, that was so funny because, like, he's just going on and you're like, yep, okay. Yep, sure. Mm-hmm. You know? Oh, you did so well. I'll tell you, I don't know if I would have had to mute the phone and swear and cuss and swear and then, you know, come back. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't say, oh, really? Tell me more. Joel said if KP and CP had different polygraphers, why does it matter that Seth had a different one also? Well, that's such a great point, right? Because that kind of just shows that there wasn't a bias. And I also think that the fact that, you know, you have Nancy Grace, her person from the FBI, who, you know, he's built a reputation over so long. I highly doubt he's going to tarnish it for that. And he also states that, hey, I don't have a dog in the fight. You know, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm just here to perform this test as I've been trained and I've done for, you know, so long as he has. And, you know, he was handpicked by Nancy Grace. I mean, so there's a lot of like reinforcements there that Seth has. And then we have CP, who has told us from the beginning that he has the TBI in his back pocket, that anytime he wants to, he can have a little effing powwow with them. And he'll make sure he gets them on the phone right now. And let's get him on the phone. And then they only gave her 5 questions on the 3rd day. Really? You only had 5 questions for her? Because I'd have a lot more than that, especially after I saw that flashlight video. Is that what prompted the polygraph on day 3? Because according to Chris, on Nancy Grace, which was March 25th, 2024, the TBI told him that he had a solid enough alibi that they didn't need to polygraph him, right? But then, lo and behold, on April 9th, 2024, he went in and took his polygraph, according to him, according to Chris, allegedly, in his opinion. You know, and he told Jules this May 1st or 2nd, so sometime in between that time period, right, was when this occurred, where he's telling Jules all of this information, right? So, oh yeah, it was hilarious. I've listened to this several times, you know, and I could play it again for you guys, because I mean, I think this is really important, especially because it gives us a better understanding. And that's what's really important. But then also, I mean, it gives us a little bit of a laugh because, you know, Katie only got 5 questions and he got 13, and Jules is funny in this too. But no, in all seriousness, you know, we read about why the TBI would do this, and they do this to people, new hires, right, or prospective hires. And so I think there's a lot to be said on, yeah, it's not admissible in court, but it can also establish whether people are being honest or dishonest. And that's very hard to detect without being hooked up to this, right? Because some people are really good liars. Chris and Katie, I'm sorry, I don't think they're good liars at all. I think they're terrible liars. But some people are ultra manipulative. So, you know, Edgar's just a tool and not the sharpest one, CC. Exactly. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I'll play it again for you guys. That is so funny. Hold on one second. Let me go to, I mean, we'll still have to go through the Nancy Grace part, but you know, just as a refresher.
That morning, was there any sign of a break-in through a window, a front door, a back door, a sliding glass door, anything at all?
No, ma'am.
Okay. No sign of forced entry. Was anything taken from the home at all?
Not that we could find anything. We couldn't find anything missing.
I want to circle back to Sebastian's shoes regarding if anything was missing. Do you have a burglar alarm?
No, ma'am.
Do you have a Ring doorbell cam?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Have the two of you taken a polygraph?
I have.
I have not.
Would you be willing to?
I've offered and volunteered on many occasions to take a polygraph, and I was told directly by law enforcement because of my whereabouts, I did not need one.
I understand. Ms. Proudfoot, did you pass your polygraph?
I did.
Those questions out of the way.
Miss Grace, could I
Question.
jump in for something?
Yes, please. And I want to follow up with a question
Yes.
regarding Miss Proudfoot's polygraph. But please, Lauren, jump in. Everybody on
Thank
the
you.
panel, now is the time to ask the Proudfoots any question that may shed light on what has happened to Sebastian. We are not in a judging arena. We are in a fact-finding arena. We can then assimilate the facts and make deductions. Please jump in. I want to go back to Katie Proudfoot. This is Sebastian's biological mother, Miss Proudfoot. What questions were you asked during your polygraph?
I was asked if I knew where my son was. I was asked if I hurt him. I was asked if I had hurt someone, among a few other questions.
And Mr. Proudfoot, you have volunteered to take a poly?
Yes, ma'am.
If I were to set up a poly for you, would you take it?
Name the place and time, ma'am. I'll be there.
Tell me hey, give us some time, we'll put it together. Ooh, April 9th, I think, was the date. It was a Tuesday. We kept it very quiet. The FBI prolificer, there's TBIs, the FBI, I think they're all the same, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know how those certifications work, but I know what you're talking about.
So, my wife got a polygraph by day 2 or day 3 of the investigation.
Right, yeah.
She passed. No problem. I get my polygraph test. We keep it quiet. The lady who did hers cannot do mine because we said we don't want any chance of somebody saying it was a biased opinion type situation. Her boss, and the other prolificer, all three come together, make my questions.
Right.
My wife got 5, and I got 13 fucking questions.
Oh.
I'm like, really? I'm whatever. I don't give a shit.
Oh, yeah.
So I go and take my polygraph test, and I passed. Steph, on the other hand, goes and takes a fucking polygraph test with Nancy Grace, knowing that motherfucker's gonna fail. He falls asleep.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. They said, well, it's inconclusive because he keeps falling asleep.
How does that even happen?
Okay, guys. So yeah, that was funny too, Jules. I caught too when he was complaining about that. You go, "Oh yeah." That's great. No, I agree, Sammy, and I heard this too. That Sammy says he definitely has some kind of issues that's allegedly got him sent to the military rather than I got getting in trouble for crimes against minors, allegedly. I agree, and I've heard that too. And, you know, I mean, a lot of people do change and turn their lives around by going into the military. I know that to be true. And I know that if you're in trouble, they will try to get you, you know, on the right track, and then they will accept you. And you know, and then correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that's kind of what I've seen in the past. And I think it is good for some people because it gives them the structure. Chris, on the other hand, it was more like, you know, he was kind of saved by that, right? And then he kind of, it seems like he was able to kind of in my opinion, use that to his advantage rather than do the honorable thing. And, the whole with great power comes great responsibility. Chris doesn't look at it like that, in my opinion. Carla says, I still think the poker party was not more than a pedo party, in my opinion. It makes me wonder. It makes me wonder, Carla, especially with some of the things, that we've seen in this case. Cece says, oh, Edgar loved to shame Sebastian with the diapers and other factoids we could have all lived without because he is just one sick individual. Absolutely. And how dare he? It's awful and disgusting. What an absolute pig. And he seems to be proud of that. So that's, on him. Sasha says, I think KP realized when he mentioned the little lights that her bedroom light came on and she wasn't sure what was the next look on her face at this question about the lights. Yeah, Sasha, and that's something to explore too now that we see this other picture, right? Because they absolutely do get nervous about these lights. And for a long time I was thinking because they had the floodlights that were taken off that they originally had on there for the longest, and then they put them back up there after Sebastian went missing. So, and then again, Little Miss Sharon's comment earlier today too, saying, it's funny that she didn't mention the flashlight. She said we couldn't find anything missing, but she never mentions the flashlight. So that was another direct quote from Katie Proudfoot to Nancy Grace. We couldn't find anything missing. Right. Now, the progression with Nancy, I think is important. And that's why I kind of left it in that clip, right? Because Nancy asks Katie and Chris, do you all have a burglar alarm? And it takes Katie about 4 to 5 seconds to say no. And then she says, do you have a Ring doorbell camera? And it takes, again, Katie 3 to 4 seconds to say no, right? And then the next question Nancy asks is, have you two taken a polygraph test? And Katie says, I have. And Chris says, I have not. And you can see the look on his face. He is absolutely annoyed and pissed off that Nancy is asking him this question, in my opinion. And you can see it. It's all over his face. So that poker face, it is not working here, Chris, because it's written all over. Now, Nancy is a fact finder, in my opinion. When she says this, we are not in a judging arena. We are in a fact finding arena. I am trying to assimilate all of the facts that I'm given, and then we can deduct and take out what we, don't need and what's not relevant or true. And then we can find the truth. And I really believe that that's what Nancy is very good at. She was a former prosecutor, and she's very well versed in asking people the same question and trying to figure out if she can kind of catch them up or if they're going to give her the same answer, right? I find it quite hilarious and at the same time disgusting that Chris runs to the TBI to take his polygraph test after challenging Nancy Grace. And, that was, let's see, the 25th, the 9th, we'll say 15 days later or 14 days later, he runs to the TBI. So, and he says that Katie took hers 2 or 3 days. Why couldn't Katie answer that question? Why couldn't Katie say, because I'm going to tell you right now, I would remember that detail for the rest of my life. I've never had to take a polygraph, but I'm pretty sure I would remember that day because it would be stressful. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're guilty or innocent. It's not fun. It's kind of like that movie with the Fockers, right? Where the dad's like an ex-CIA agent and he's like hooking the guy up and, he's obviously he's got the Nicorette and he's like popping him and chewing it and, he's all like weirded out. I mean, you're going to be like that, right? Especially if it's your fiance's father and he was in the CIA. But again, it would just be stressful. Holly S says, Sammy, I'd love to know if his mom ever got tired of bailing him out. Oh, I bet you she's tired now if she's not, Holly S. I bet you she's tired now, because he's put her in a whole world of trouble. And that is the sad part with a narcissist and the flying monkey mom, because she does everything for him, right? And it does get exhausting. It has to be. Yeah, I think mommy may have been his first. Yeah, Carla. I agree. No doubt about the diaper thing, Jules says to Carla. Yeah, and it's absolutely sick. Absolutely sick. Oh, yeah, karma will come, YouTuber. Yes, absolutely. And I believe in that, too. I think what goes around comes around, and maybe not karma in the real sense of it, but I think that it absolutely, you're going to pay for what you've done, and what you put out there comes back. Absolutely. Sammy says, and I think this is the second or third place where she says that she's looking at a picture of her son, not reading notes. But I think if that were true, she would have lifted up the picture for the camera. Well, I agree, and when she says that comment to Nancy Grace, she has like a compact or something that she snaps or closes, right? Clap shut. And, she's like, does that, and it's like, she's like, I'm looking at a picture of my son, because Nancy Point asks her, she's like, look, much has been made about you showing a lack of emotion, the way that you all have handled this, so I'm going to ask you, what's going on. And she's like, oh, the reason I don't look at the camera is because I'm looking at a picture of my son. CP takes, Sasha says, CP takes over now. KP diverts by saying Sebastian would have stepped on them, but then does it make sense? Oh, stepped outside, because I know Nancy asks about the window, and if Sebastian went out the window, what would he step on, or what would be under the window? And yeah, and then they say mulch and bushes. So Little Miss Sharon says, oh, and the heap of cameras missing from the inside and outside of their home missing too. Yeah, and see, that's the thing. They were so quiet. That they had burglar alarms or, an alarm system. With her working for Brinks, also with the Ring doorbell camera, I'm sure they had something. And I mean, Katie was by herself with Sebastian in the house, and they didn't have anything to make sure that they were safe. I mean, I don't know. Especially her working in communications, it doesn't add up. Sasha says because of CP's demand, Sebastian went out the front door, but KP will have to explain her bedroom light coming on and her little lights not being disturbed at all because she said they would be. Well, absolutely. And, you can't deny that there's a light on in the house. Well, there's two, in my opinion. There's one in that other back area, which I haven't figured out what that back area actually is, because the dining room, to my knowledge, it's like if you walk in the front door of their home, if you were to go to the right, there would be Sebastian's room and, his bathroom and things like that on that one end of the house. And then you go through and there's a dining room and then living room. So it looks like it could be the living room, kitchen area, and then Katie's room, but I'm not 100% sure. But help me out if you guys can tell. There's just no denying it. I think we have enough suspicious probable cause here too, Sasha. I do. Absolutely. Sammy says, plus how he just had surgery or was about to have surgery. So yeah, I've been taking those heavy pain medicines. Yeah, and that's another thing that might mess with the results. Yes, Sammy, and that's why they let Seth take it again. Well, and exactly. And then also with him being so tired, he's out searching. He was also at that time spreading a lot of awareness through podcasts, going on lives and discussing Sebastian, sharing information, and searching. And think about it, his adrenaline pumping, you don't know where your son is. You have this other side and these other parents, I use that very loosely, who are absolutely muddying the waters every chance they get. They're not being mindful that what they're saying isn't making sense unless they're doing it on purpose. Then they're very mindful of it. But in the beginning, you might not think like that, or you may try not to think like that, right? Because, you're trying to be a united force with the other parents, but then when you see these weird actions and they're lying, it just, it makes it absolutely hard to believe. Sasha says it's safe to assume the 3:06 a.m. that the mother was up and still active. The common area and the vehicle are related to Sebastian's disappearance, so it indicates the mother premeditated and carried it out. Well, I agree, Sasha. Literally, this is a crime. And, I think it's undeniable now who the light source was who went back to the house. After we're seeing this activity in the home, like you said, the lights at 3:06 a.m., absolutely. Yeah, because it shows that Katie was still awake. And we all know, and we saw from the Texas Roadhouse video, that Katie doesn't play around. She seems like a pretty strict mother, and that Sebastian was very attentive and, mindful of her. And he did mind her, right? And even with the rolls, he didn't even give her any lip about it. He sat there and watched her, making sure she had her share. And then when he went to go take one, as soon as she even, gave him that look, he put his hand away. And he didn't say anything. He was like, oh, why can't I have it? Or what, none of that. It was just, it was like he went inside of himself. And it just, that roll stuff makes me so mad. Sammy says, and it's funny the narratives that the proud folks come up with, but then the next couple of weeks, all you heard was, yes, that's the only one who hasn't taken a poly with current LE, so he must be guilty. Well, and maybe this is kind of a distrust in LE, and maybe I have a bias because I like Nancy Grace, right? But I think I would be more apt to believe, especially in this case with the corruption that I think exists, someone, a third party like Nancy Grace, who doesn't have, again, any skin in the game. She just wants to find out the truth and what the facts are. So I think I find his more credible, but I see what you're saying, Sammy, because I do remember them trying to pull that nonsense, But Seth himself did say as well, and I can't remember who he was speaking with, but he absolutely said that, and maybe it was Nancy Grace too. But he said, hey, law enforcement didn't ask me to take a polygraph. I volunteered to take one, and I'll take one anytime. And Nancy's like, well, can I give you one? And he's like, sure, but he wasn't like, name the time and place, ma'am. And then he never shows up. He didn't challenge her and then not show up. That's what Chris Proudfoot did. Aw, he wants a brownie button. For fuck's sake, stop. Bo. They struggled to find a baseline with CP. That's why more questions, in my opinion. Wow, that's a good point, little Miss Sharon. I'm sure he was trying to give more than a one-word answer, right? Maybe he even told the polygrapher, let me make this crystal clear. And the guy's like, yes or no is all we need. Oh my gosh, that's such a good point. That family's like herding cats. Corralling cats, right? CC. Oh my gosh. Linda D says, I believe Ted Bundy passed a polygraph. He sure did. Yeah, great point, Linda. Absolutely. There's been a lot of people who have passed polygraphs and they were lying, well, come to find out they were, right? And I think that's another reason why they're just inadmissible. There might be other reasons, so. Carla, you probably don't like those cats because they get your birdies. I love cats. I like any animal. Um, but cats are funny. Sammy says, yep, yep, yep. She's like 34 and he's like 41. They both act like they're 18 and dress like they're 65. Oh my goodness. I don't know who picks Katie's wardrobes, but yeah, I have to say they're a little bit weird. Ooh, packing for vacation, Detroit. I'm so glad you're here. All right, that sounds like fun. Where are you going? I wonder if they gave Brian K a lie detector test. That's a good question, Little Miss Sharon. That guy is so weird. He can like stare right through the screen. Some of those pictures they got of him, I don't know. I think he tries to creep people out. There are no baselines with Edgar, Cece says, because everything he says is a lie. I just can't believe they passed it. I really cannot believe they passed it. If they did, they did something. Either that or they believe their lies. And, that's another thing, is that some people do genuinely believe their lies, so they're not going to have that physiological reaction to the questions, right? Because it's easy as pie for them, Yeah, and the psychopathic tendencies, exactly, Sammy, come into play. Ted Bundy passed because he's a psychopath. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and he believes his own lies. He has no guilt. He has no conscience, right? He doesn't have that reaction. Yeah, it's so interesting. I knew what you meant, Sammy, not podcast, Polly. A good thing that your phone says does podcast more than Polly. Carla says, well, what did Sebastian have to do other than online for fun? Yeah, exactly. And I just find it to be really silly when people say, well, my kids do exactly what I tell them to do every second of the day. No, they don't. Come on. We were kids once too. We didn't do everything our parents told us to. Jules says that's basically how the whole call was. Oh gosh. Oh my God. I believe it. I mean, Jules says, I will say he was never mean to me personally. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Well, it's like the underlying aggression, that because I could feel it, but I didn't think that it was towards you, which was a good thing because I would have been mad, because there's no reason, I think that's the thing that frustrates me too, is that, you're trying to help. I'm trying to help. There's a lot of people out there that would love nothing more than to just help. And Chris just gets so angry with the people that are trying to help. And I think it just stems from him wanting us all to just be quiet about it and not talk about it. So exactly, Jules. That's such a great point. Nancy would never hire anybody other than an expert. Yeah, she wants the best of the best, And another thing that she said in here that I found to be really funny, and I didn't clip that part, but, she says, like, look, I want to see this footage, raw and real. I don't want it edited. I want it all, to see all of it so she could take it all in. She doesn't want anybody to have enhanced anything, really. She just wants the raw stuff. And I agree with that, because that's the best way that you can make the best assessment of information that you're gathering, is if you really have everything from A to B, in my opinion. And Carla says, lady, exactly, I've been thinking that for a long time. If he wanted to leave, he could just have done it while it was light outside. Yes. And mom's home and someone takes him when they could get caught. Yeah. I agree with that too, Carla. It's like, I think that Sebastian would have planned for something after school when the coast was clear, right? And it was light outside. I agree. And I think he would have taken things with him. Even a little child, will want to take their stuff with them, right? Because it's their comfort items, right? Their blankie. Any kids that have run away, we've kind of laughed about it in the chat. They take their stuff with them. They're going to do that. Michelle says, I love when Nancy Grace told CP, basically, I'm not speaking with you, when he tried to answer the question she asked KP, and I laughed. Yeah, she did that too. Well, and also when Katie tried to answer for Chris, she says, to Mr. Proudfoot, to Mr. Proudfoot. Like, I'm not asking you, I'm asking him. And that's, it is comical, but it's true. Yeah, she said, I'm talking to her. Exactly. Well, and they've always kind of done that for each other, right? So that's another reason why I started thinking, well, maybe it's not Chris, telling her she can't talk. Maybe it's that she wants him there for reinforcement, and then also to clean up some of the things that he says, because, let's be honest, Chris thinks he's doing great when really he's, doing more harm than good most of the time. So I'm sure she's wanting to be there too, to kind of help clean up his stuff. Yeah, well, that's the issue. Sammy says nothing could ever be their fault. Everything is Sebastian's fault or Seth's fault. Problems at school were Seth's fault, which makes no sense since he was at the house like 4 days a month. I agree. And the bigger issues that Sebastian was dealing with were not happening at Seth's house, according to Seth, right? And I mean, of course, that's allegedly in Seth's opinion, and I get that, but it's been kind of verified in different ways as well, Yeah, I mean, see, Bo says no, all of our neighbors have a Ring door cam, but we don't. And, I mean, I don't see everybody in that neighborhood having surveillance cameras, but it seems like a lot of people do. But these days it's tough to find somebody that doesn't have a Ring doorbell camera. It really does. Well, and especially a lot of those people had multiple cars in their driveway, and then, a boat, things like that. You're more apt to have cameras when you have things that you don't want stolen. Sammy says, Katie always seems sedated, like just very blah. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't get any reaction on the machine from her, and then it wouldn't have mattered how many questions you asked. Well, that's true too. I mean, and especially with the baseline, it could just be super duper mellow. And then when she's answering the questions, as long as she keeps herself calm, and honestly, there's a lot of different techniques and tactics to keep yourself calm. And let's not forget Katie and Chris's military training. If they are taken prisoner of war, there are certain things that they're trained to withstand in order to survive that sort of thing, right? They're going to ask you questions like, where are the rest of your people, right? Things like that. And I mean, again, I'm a civilian, so help me out, please, guys. But, they're going to be asking you questions as a prisoner of war to try to find out information so they can take the rest of your people, right? So, thanks, little Miss Sharon. Hey, Meow, good to see you. Thanks, Carla. I'm like that too. I'm so glad when people say that, hit the like, and then I go back, did I hit it? Oh, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. Sammy G says, she didn't ask if you needed a J. She asked if you take one, but look at the eyes right before she says, Miss Grace, can I follow up? Oh, that's interesting, Sammy, if she'd hurt him or if she hurt someone. Yeah, and see, I found that to be odd that they asked her, did she hurt someone? I wonder why they would ask her that. Did you hurt Sebastian or did you hurt someone? Yeah, hurt someone who he was the only one that there beside her. That's so true. Yeah, Spo, exactly. I would have had to Clorox my phone after CP's voice being heard through it. It's so unclean forever. Yes. That's so true, Cece. Sammy, I kept it quiet because he didn't know if he was going to pass. We still don't know. Well, that's a great point. I bet you they did keep it quiet because he didn't know if they were going to pass or he was going to pass. Absolutely. He seemed absolutely nervous about it. And, like I said, I can't fault him for being nervous because I would be nervous too. I'd be nervous as hell. I'd be, shaking in my boots. But yeah, that's a great point. I bet you that's probably exactly why. Michelle says, but in a weird way, look on KP's face. Here she reminds me of a person in toxic relationship, battered syndrome, just not a feeling I get from her, and how she isn't able to talk without him jumping in. Yeah, I agree, Michelle. Well, and I wonder if it's an act, and yeah, doing it for her. Yeah. I wonder if it is an act, or if it's the medications, or if it's just nervousness, because she does act absolutely strange in this interview compared to any of the other ones, really. I mean, she kind of, that's, yeah. This interview was definitely an odd one with Katie. And then we see kind of like a free-spirited, I think even a drunk Katie on QB. Cece says, I love that movie, Lady Freedom. CP is a fucker for sure. He's a little fucker. Oh, thank you, little Miss Sharon, for your super sticker. Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you. Aw. My goodness, he is. And I mean, anybody would be nervous about that. Hey, Laura Arnold, good to have you. She's a cold-hearted witch, Carla. I agree. It took me 3 days, then I knew mom and stepdad or stepfoot were guilty. Yeah. It didn't take long at all, right? Well, because they weren't coming out and saying anything. And I understand that not everybody is going to know exactly what to do or say in a situation like this, but their silence was definitely odd. Especially because it seems like they studied other cases. You know what I mean? Hey, Adam Forever 21, good to see you. Michelle says psychos don't have empathy or fight or flight, isn't going to register the same. Habitual liars can pass polys since they believe what they say to be a fact. Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. And I do think that plays a big part in why they don't find them admissible in court, because it's just too hard to tell. I don't remember my mother ever telling me I couldn't eat something either. I mean, like I said, we did have restrictions on pop and stuff like that. But I think that more or less came because on my dad's side of the family, both of his parents were diabetic. So I think that was like a sugar. They just were being careful with that. And it was more of a treat, right? Like we'd have pop on Fridays with pizza and stuff. So, that sort of thing, but never restricted where we were ever starved or, I mean, there was always healthy snacks too. Like my mom would have granola bars and and then you'd have a special treat, whatever, every now and then. But I think the sugar thing was more of just to be healthy. But we were so active when we were kids too. And kids are so active most of the time. You're running around outside, your bike is your car. That's how you get around town. And then when you get older and you're a teenager, you walk the blocks or whatever, with your friends, because the bikes are kind of not as cool anymore until you get your driver's license and whatnot. But I mean, yeah, Adam Forever 21, that's a great point. Katie works for security, but somehow it's convenient that your dumbass, excuse me, yours is down, my dumbass mob would say. Well, and I just can't believe that they tried to pass it off like that, because 4 seconds to answer a yes or no question, like, do you have a security camera, or excuse me, do you have a burglar alarm? Yes or no. And she just sits there for 4 seconds, literally. No. And then the next one I think is more like 3 seconds, still asking about the Ring, doorbell, if they have one or not. So yeah, Adam Forever 21 says Ted Bundy passed one, and that's why the courts don't use them. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Chris does not have a very high IQ. It's clear whenever he opens his mouth. He always mispronounces things, which cracks me up. She probably wanted to hog that role herself, in my opinion. I get so mad about the role. Thank you for making me laugh about it. Adam Forever 21. I mean, I just cannot believe, and it did look like she was hogging them all. She took like 2 at a time. I'm like, gee whiz, you don't need all that. Sammy says, not once did Edgar ever turn to KP and say, how did it happen? Or, yeah, is this? Yeah, I agree. How it happened, or is that right? Or ask any confirming questions. He knew all of the answers. Yeah, okay. Totally scripted, Sammy. I agree. Yeah, that's a great point. He doesn't ever look to her for reinforcement or validation, and he wasn't there. So that just goes to show. But, it's funny in the Chronicles of Olivia interview, when Katie is talking about going to pick up their niece, she looks at Chris for validation, and the whole time he's nodding yes or no, it seems like to her too. And I also think a lot of the little coughs and the, these things were definitely part of a signal, in terms of, yeah, keep going or no, stop, Hey, Lana Lee. Lana Lee says, look at KP's family history. No way she could be normal. Yeah, I know. And, I do feel sorry for Katie because of that, I do. But you're right. I think that level of trauma has really, instead of her recognizing the patterns and understanding that those things are toxic, and the ways of a person like Chris is toxic, she may be attracted to those qualities without even really knowing it. I would love to see them get interviewed again too, Lana Lee. Absolutely. Absolutely. Adam Forever 21 says, in my opinion, Crispy knew shady people that helped with his plan. In my opinion, I'd start New Mexico and Mexico rewards. That's a strong possibility. And he's lived several different places too, so he could have connections in many different areas. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I'm going to play this next clip here. And it's just a little short one.
Earlier, you had stated you heard a noise in his room before you went to bed. What time was that?
Around 10 o'clock.
10 p.m. What did it sound like?
Just a thud.
A thud. You stated that you said, look, I don't care what you're doing in there, go to bed. Is that right?
I was on the couch, which is near his room, and I said, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? And he said, no, ma'am. And I said, well, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off and go to sleep.
So you heard his voice at 10 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any idea what the sound actually was?
I do not, no.
Okay, guys, so she doesn't know what the sound was because she didn't go check on him, right? This noise occurred around 10 o'clock, right? But before this, it was at 10, no questions. But now she's saying around. And then Nancy says, well, what kind of noise was it? And Katie says, it's just a thud, no big deal, right? And then Katie changes her story again and makes it sound more endearing, in my opinion, where she adds in, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? Kind of like, hey, sweetheart, did you fall out of the bed? And he says, no, ma'am. But wouldn't you say, well, are you okay? That a thud is a loud noise, right? And it's kind of like if I heard that in the next room and my child was back there, I might think, are you okay? Or what are you doing in there? But instead, Katie says, I don't care what you're doing in there. And she was very adamant and also fighting back and forth with Chris when she spoke with Heather Cohen about this. She said, no, I told him, I don't care what you're doing in there. Get back to bed. Go to sleep. I don't care what you're doing in there. Most parents, it doesn't matter how old the child is, you're going to say, whatever. I mean, and it doesn't even match up when she says, hey, Bubba, did you fall out of the bed? And then I don't care what you're doing in there. Get to sleep. You're either annoyed because he's awake still and he's not supposed to be. Now you let him stay up and after his bedtime, and now he's up still at 10 o'clock an hour later. Yeah, any regular mom would be a little bit annoyed, right? Like, hey, bud, I let you stay up later, and I understand Bubba is a term of endearment, I understand that. I say bud more than, but I've said bub too before. So it just depends, you have different nicknames for kids, but usually a boy would be like bub or bud or buddy, right? But you're also not going to call them bub or buddy when they're supposed to be asleep and it's a school night and they're making noises in the room, right? So again, but she sugarcoats it for Nancy Grace and says, oh, Bubba, bub, no, I don't think so. You're either going to say, hey, mister, it's time for you to get back into bed, or, but you do care what he's doing in there because he's not supposed to be awake still and he needs to get to sleep so he can wake up early for school, especially if he didn't take a shower. We never heard about a shower, So it's not, and she never tells anybody else that she called him Bubba or anything during that time. Not even on Duchess for the Missing. And that was the first time she brings up that she calls him Bubba. Joy says, my husband was a Navy. He died from hepatitis C. He proved providence for everyone in the 70s, and that's why they have more hepatitis C meds today, watching someone that was never rug related pass away. Oh, I'm so sorry, Joyce. Well, I'm glad that he was able to pave the way for other people. Oh my goodness. And thank you for his service too. He passed because they never cleaned the needle gun in those days. Oh, from the tattooing. Yeah. Oh my goodness, Joyce. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, I love Nancy Grace, Carla. She's the best, right? She grilled them, and boy, were they nervous. Talk about nervous. Okay, so let's just watch this other next little clip. It's only 54 seconds.
From the time that you left for the job in Memphis to February 26th, did you visit the home?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
I was home. I can't give exact dates. Law enforcement has told me not to provide exact dates, but I had been home multiple times prior to February. And then I left early February and then didn't come back till February 26th, the morning he was missing.
So you were not home from the time you left early February till Feb 26. Is that right?
Correct, ma'am.
Where were you living in Memphis?
I have an RV trailer that I stay in at an RV park.
RV park. Okay. Following back up.
Okay, guys. So, there he skates the question. Nancy says, where were you staying? Where were you living in Memphis? And he says, I have a trailer that I live in. That's not what she asked you. She said, where are you living? Meaning, what campground? Because he says, I have a campground, but yeah, but where? Like what, because if somebody asked me a question like that, I would give them a straightforward answer. I'm staying at this RV park, right? Especially if it would help find my son. But they're not doing that. So again, in my opinion, Chris slips up here. He tells Nancy Grace, yes, I was home in February after I left. But then he backtracks and says, but I can't give you exact dates for that because law enforcement told me not to. But in reality, I believe that he was home, and that was during the time that there was the parent-teacher conference. But they had already told everyone that he hadn't been home since February 1st. So he's keeping with that narrative, but at first he slips up and he says, yeah, I was there, but I can't give you the exact dates. And then, of course, he skates around the question of where he was actually living while he was staying down in Memphis. Adam Forever 21 says, my only rule was don't take my last Dr. Pepper. Yes. I always used to tease my mom and drink her Pepsi, and then I'd say, yours tastes better than mine. That's cute, though. Sammy says, it's so funny when Mike D talks about how small CP's vocabulary is, but he thinks he's fancy by saying something like pervy and says it over and over because he doesn't even know it's the wrong word. Oh my gosh. Yes. It's so funny. He does that with a couple of different words, and it's like and I think that's a narcissistic trait. It's the superiority complex, the delusions of grandeur, and they think they do have a very wide vocabulary when in reality they often mispronounce words. They use the wrong words, out of context, right? And they're nowhere near as intelligent as they think they are, but they always think they're the smartest person in the room, and it's just really funny to see them in action sometimes. Lana Lee says, oh, now LE has stopped CP from saying he was home at all in February. Exactly, Lana Lee. And that's the thing that is his go-to, right? Anytime he doesn't want to answer a question. The funniest one too, and I didn't add the clip in because there's just so many examples, but when he tells Nancy Grace, like, she says, so your vehicle, Miss Proudfoot, was the only vehicle in the driveway that night, and they said no, there was a work van in the driveway, and Chris says, but we can't give you any information about that. And Nancy's like, why would that be privileged information if it was sitting out in the driveway? And he said, well, because we didn't get permission from Katie's work. And Nancy says, well, did you ask permission? And Chris is like, no. And it's like, well, okay then. So obviously that's not an issue. But he'll blame anybody like somebody else is an authority over him. Yet he acts like he's always the one, pounding his chest and acting like he's in full control of everything and everyone, but yeah, he's got to ask permission from law enforcement or Katie's work. It's like, you're such a bullshitter, Proudfoot. Wow. Joyce said he went to 17 countries in 4 years. Yeah. That's one thing about the Navy is you travel a lot in the Navy, right? I mean, other branches of the military do as well, but sailors do travel to many, many, many places. I have a lot of Navy members, or people who served in the Navy in my family, and they by far have the most travel time of everybody. Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, and even being stationed, California. It sounds like he was there. Obviously, he would have went to Chicago for a little while. So multiple different places. Hey, Lil Redo, good to see you. So, very interesting. Very interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, Joyce. You were probably talking about your husband. Oh my goodness, married almost 26 years. I was gonna say, yeah, CP with them being, there's no telling how many places he may have traveled to. And that goes for Katie too. Just depending on where she was stationed, and kind of with her being in communications, she may have, Lil Redo says, Lady Freedom, do you need my sociopath book? Oh my gosh, yes, I think we do. I think I do need to compare some of this to Chris Proudfoot. Absolutely. I loved when you read that one, Lil Redo. That was so good. Joyce says his kids, my kids, and everyone else's kids are 17 in a 1,250,000 square foot house, but happy, healthy, and not all mine, but mine. Yes, that's me. Well, that's what's important, and I always say that too. In this case, it's so odd to me that, Chris and Katie kind of run the household like they do. Especially with Chris being, away from his daughter. You would think that he would want to have a good relationship with Sebastian, especially because he doesn't have a son and he does, he has a daughter. You would think that he would take that opportunity and that gift that he was given and not squander it, I think KP could be a sociopath as well, Lana Lee. That's a good point. Because I say that because it seems like she doesn't have a very good grasp of reality. Also, she seems to enjoy hurting others, like when she videotaped Nina. Only somebody that is evil would do something like that, or mentally ill, in my opinion. I get the vibe from Katie that she's histrionic. So histrionic personality disorder, right? And again, I'm not a doctor, obviously, huge disclaimer there, but just really matches the profile, in my opinion, like Amber Heard. So think Amber Heard. Aw, thank you, Joyce. I love you too. Thank you so much. Aw. So yeah, that's kind of my assessment on Katie, but there could be other things too. And, I don't like to talk about anybody's rough past. So, I mean, and I think it's beyond rough. But I don't think that she has done enough to kind of break the cycle or understand that there needs to be some kind of break there, especially when she allegedly left Sebastian with her mom, even though there was someone else there. It still was unacceptable, in my opinion. And, just really shows that she doesn't have a very good grasp on, protecting Sebastian from situations like that, which is concerning. Okay, guys, so I have this other clip here I wanted to show you right here.
And you're headed back to Memphis right now. Are you in your RV right now?
I am in my RV. We are not disclosing our current location just because of safety reasons, due to the YouTubers, the Facebookers out there that have sent some very heinous, threatening information and things of that nature, threatening to be outside of our house, all kinds of nasty things. So we're not disclosing our location at this time, unless you're law enforcement.
Ms. Proudfoot, is that one of the reasons you left the home?
One of them, yes, ma'am.
Question to you guys. When police came in and processed your home, did they look with, for instance, luminol? Did they check? What did they do when they searched your home?
They thoroughly searched my home with many different things. They removed some things for the dogs. to hold the scent, and for Sebastian's DNA. I know that they used thermal
Night imagery.
night vision, thank you. And I don't know exactly all of the tools that they used, but I do know that multiple different searches were done on my home by many different people, detectives, sheriffs, and a few others.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I wouldn't swear that the forensics folks showed up or not, because there were so many folks in and out of the house that it was just, "Hi, I'm so and so with law enforcement. I'm so and so with law enforcement." Okay.
Every time they've said we need to look, or please do.
Does Sebastian have a hardwood floor or a carpeted floor?
In his bedroom,
Carpet.
Yes. Carpeting.
Carpet.
Did they remove any carpeting?
No, ma'am.
Do you feel confident they searched his bathroom?
They did.
Yes, ma'am, they did.
When you state that they removed items for the scent dogs, what did they take?
Clothing, a blanket that he used like every day, and a few other items of his, toiletries, like his brush.
Lauren Conlon joining us, investigative journalist. Lauren, again, thank you for being with us. And earlier you were hearing sound from...
Okay, guys. So a couple of things in here. So Katie left Sebastian after he went missing from the house. So very odd behavior, in my opinion. Chris goes into how YouTubers are threatening them and saying awful things and blah, 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 blah. So unless you're law enforcement, and then Nancy cuts him off and is like, nobody cares. Again, we're here for Sebastian, not for you, Chris. But she goes on to ask them about luminol testing. And Chris says, you know, I can't say that no forensics folks were in the house, because people were just coming in and saying, I'm so-and-so with law enforcement, I'm so-and-so with law enforcement. I mean, it really shows the lack of care or concern when the parents don't even know what was done in the house forensically. It causes me to pause, especially if you have no idea what happened to your son. You wouldn't want to know who all was in there, what they were doing, and probably trying to figure out what else could be done to try to find your son, I would think. Now, Katie indicates that there were items removed from the home for scent and DNA, like clothing, a blanket that was used by Sebastian, and his brush. So those were the items. She also says that they used thermal night imagery in the house, which I found to be very odd. I don't know why they would have to use thermal imaging, night imagery in the house. I think that was something that they were using down the road and that they had put up in case Sebastian walked or anybody could be picked up, like a heat signature could be picked up. I don't believe that that was part of the search in the house. But nevertheless, she says that there were detectives in the house and sheriffs in the house. But they don't know if they did any type of luminol testing or forensics for fingerprinting or anything like that. Chris also stated that they said that there's ridges in the fingerprints, and that's only things that they do in the movies. But I found it interesting that Nancy asked about the carpet in Sebastian's room and whether a carpet sample was actually taken from the bedroom for analysis. And the reason that I find it odd that it wasn't is because, one, there was an Amber Alert issued. And so if there was any type of inkling that this could have been an abduction, then you might want to take some of the carpet out of Sebastian's room to see if there's any fibers that can be found that are foreign or that shouldn't be there, right? Very important. Carpet fibers have solved many, many cases, but yet they failed to do so when they had the opportunity, and they didn't. They just didn't do it. Oh yeah, exactly. Joy says I could never choose me over my dog, let alone my kids or anyone's kids. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and kids are vulnerable. They need us. It's just like it is like a pet in a certain way, except for it's much more right serious. I agree, Joyce. But yeah, you kind of learn to put yourself um on the back burner when you have kids. What you need and want doesn't really even matter anymore, right? Because it's all about what the children need and want. And deciphering if what they want is what they really need, right? Because you are raising them and you don't want to give them, everything. Adam Forever 21 says, "Yeah, why was he gone for weeks in February?" I mean, I think it was because he wasn't supposed to be in the home because of CPS, and CPS was like, you're causing issues. We're getting calls. This is our fourth, report on you in a short amount of time. And I think that he was told that either he removes himself from the home or Sebastian will be removed. I have heard instances where they have done that. Um, hey, Seclusion Works. Good to see you, hon. I hope you're feeling better. I saw your messages from earlier. Thank you for being here. Oh. Sammy says, remember the neighbor said that like 2 weeks prior to Sebastian going missing, they were at Texas Roadhouse and Chris got mad about something and got up and left because Sebastian was upset about something sold out. Yeah, I do remember that, Sammy. And I think it's important to remember that again, there were a lot of issues that kind of snowball. There was a snowball effect here, and there was a lot of issues involved. I really want to kind of hit that part home, so I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, it seems like there was a mishap at Texas Roadhouse. Now, it sounds to me, and it appears to me that that was Chris's place to go, not Sebastian's favorite place to go. So, was Katie deliberately antagonizing him? I mean, because it's weird. They've all said that he doesn't really prefer red meat. And so, and I get that they have chicken and fish, but Lana says likely he was directed to not be in the home when Sebastian was there. I think that's true, Lana. I do. Motives. Adam Forever 21 says, yeah, motives. Lana Lee, yeah. And I mean, there is, and I think there's more than one motive here, because I do think it was a snowball effect, and I do think that, or a domino effect, right, where just one after the next event caused bad things, right, a bad outcome. Oh, Sammy, that's interesting. Sammy says, I think they use the ladders on KP's van to take the lights and cameras down so he can't disclose and can't remember the truck year because he don't talk about my truck being in the geofence. Yes, exactly. Can't trucks because of geofencing, right? Oh, man. Those are really great points. And I think that's very possible and probable. I mean, anytime they were asked any of those specific questions, it made them very nervous. And that causes me to speculate that there's a reason behind that, right? Because why would it make you nervous about a work van that's sitting in the driveway, right? It should have nothing to do with what happened at all. Adam Forever 21 says he likes that pervy word because it's like pervert. I agree. And he is definitely pervy. We know that he cannot go anywhere without hitting on every woman in his sight, which is, I mean, whatever. But when you've been married 6 times, you might want to cool it, cool your jets there, buddy. It's a little out of hand. It's a little out of hand. Did they use night thermal to check walls in the house? Oh, maybe so. But see, I don't know. Now the heat signature or finding kind of something in the wall, but the night thing is what throws me off, because I know there was something it was like some sort of a machine or whatever. I'll try to see if I can find it for tomorrow, because it was sitting on the street, and I remember them talking about it in a couple of different interviews on how they were using it in case they could catch a heat signature on it, like in case somebody walked past of it. And I really didn't understand that, I guess, because Sebastian was already gone. But I guess if he did decide to come back into the neighborhood, but then if he came back into the neighborhood, he would have known the code to the front door, and he would have, been, "Hey mom, I'm home. I'm sorry I left," or, whatever. He might have been crying, hungry, scared, whatever, if he was able to make it back like that. So Lana Lisa, Sammy G, I can see that. They both did not like Sebastian. Eating out with him must have been triggering for the both of them. Yeah, and it just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart for Sebastian, because you can see how triggering it was, Lana Lee says Ellie did not search the house as a crime scene. They were searching for a missing child, not a harmed one. I agree. They were just operating off of the assumption that Sebastian was a runaway, right? I mean, they say just walked off, but like he ran away from home. And maybe once they saw the CPS reports, that kind of pushed their theory a little bit. But I still don't think they should have only focused on one theory or another. I really don't, because I think that's what really got their goat. She was very mentally cruel to that child. I agree, Lil Redo. And you see it in the video. We don't even need the sound on to understand or feel it, right? Because if we just watch it, we can see the body language. I do think Adam Forever 21 that Katie displays those traits. Yeah, I do. It's because of the deviance behind it too. Like, she enjoys some of that toxicity. Absolutely. Joyce says, Chris said that they would never find him and they would talk about this for years and needs to be studied. Yeah, I remember him saying that this will be a case that'll be studied. How strange is that? And who says something like that? Who wants to be a case study? Who wants their child to be a case study? Who wants their family to be a case study? I mean, I guess if it helps somebody else out, maybe, but it's a very odd statement. Joyce, right? Most men love talking about their trucks. I mean, most people that are proud of their vehicle like talking about their vehicles. Joyce says, I have a truck. I love my truck. Please talk about my truck. Adam Forever 21 says, left because of threats. Wow, I would have fought a rabid grizzly to stay in search. I know, exactly. I don't think anybody could have made me leave the house. I mean, I would have said, I would have contacted the authorities if I thought I was in danger, maybe put up extra security measures, maybe sleep with, the pew pew or whatever, KNIFE or whatever, whatever you have to do. But leaving my home, the home that my child left from, went missing from, went poof, whatever, abducted from, I wouldn't leave. No. Because the first thing that I would want my son to know, or my child to know, is that I waited here for you. One example I can think of is Stevie Stainer's parents. And I know I've referenced Stevie a lot. But he was abducted, and he did escape, right, when he was older, because the man brought home a new little boy, and he was like, oh no, and he rescued the boy, right? But then his parents saved Christmas presents for him every single year, and when he came home, they gave him his Christmas presents, right? Because they always had the hope that he would come home. That's the kind of hope that people hang on to. He didn't come home for 7 years? So for 7 Christmases, they saved his Christmas presents. For 7 birthdays, they saved his birthday presents, right? In hopes that one day they'd be able to still give them to him. And they were able to, you know? And I agree, Adam Forever 21, nobody could get me out of that house, and nobody could make me not put out a ribbon or a light or something, you know? It's just, ugh. Show Poodle says, do you think that LE has bothered to aggressively question certain people on panels he is engaged with? I don't know, Show Poodles, but I think they need to. You know, I know that I make light of a lot of subjects and things like that, but I will say that, like, a lot of the locals who have been directly involved in this case and, you know, finding all of this stuff, and it really causes me to pause, especially when they're part of the problem, right? And muddying the waters, and yeah, there's so much more to this, and I think they should be questioned, most definitely. But it makes me wonder how many of them are in cahoots with law enforcement, that law enforcement deliberately lets this shit go on like the way that it does, you know, on a personal level, on a, you know, even on the YouTube level, because, you know, in my opinion, there's been a lot of things that have been brought to light on YouTube, and they don't take it seriously at all. It's like, well, if it happens on YouTube, then it didn't happen. And it's weird. And they're allowing for it. They're not stopping it. They're not urging us to, you know, be mindful of anything. They're just saying the rumor mill doesn't help anything. But something tells me that in that town, the rumor mill is part of life. And it has been for eons, you know, and the good old boys run the show. So, you know, they don't mind the rumors, because as long as it takes the heat off of them, then let the rumors fly, right? Because nobody's telling the truth, and nobody knows the truth, and nobody gets in trouble, and the case stays unsolved, and those who are involved live to you know, do some more dirty work, because we don't know who's done what for who. We don't know who's washed each other's hands. We just don't in this case. But I've always felt that there was a strong level of corruption. I tried to cool it down a little bit for Seth's sake and his relationship with law enforcement, but it's very clear to see that there's something more going on here. Sammy G says, well, because they had no indication that they ever left the house, they were saying. Well, and that's true. That is very true. Now, they did do the surveillance around the surveying of using what is that machine that they use? But basically, it captures the crime scene, and then you can go back to it using virtual reality. So they did use that technology. We saw that. I think Craddock knew exactly what happened to Sebastian and closed his eyes and ears. I think pedo ring is deep there, and who knows how high up it goes. Well, that's a good point, Carla. And, you know, it does make me wonder. Another thing that makes me wonder is because of Sebastian's diagnoses, I don't know that people actually give a crap. And because it's very unfortunate, but some people do not value everyone's lives. And I'm just going to put it that way. And when somebody calls somebody on, you know, an R word, you know, and disgusting derogatory terms towards someone who is on the spectrum or who has a rare chromosome deletion, it's absolutely horrific and disgusting. And it just shows that they do not value that person whatsoever. They look at them as a diagnosis rather than a person. So it justifies them not looking for them or not giving a crap about them or not caring if they were abused or not. Little Redo says, I do believe that Sebastian was or is smarter than Crispy Critter, and that made Crispy Critter mad and very jealous. I agree with that, Little Redo. You know, narcissists are very jealous and competitive, right? So if anyone gets more attention, if they are not the center of attention, look out, because they'll throw a fit and then they will be the center of attention, right? If they weren't already, then they'll make sure they are. And then again, you know, they love to triangulate, and in that scenario with 3 people, it's, you know, a narcissist's dream, right? They can pit, you know, everybody up against each other and then sit back and watch the chaos and laugh and be delighted in what they've caused. That's the narcissist. Adam Forever 21 says Nancy would shred you apart. She's not stupid. No, she's not. And they were nervous as all get out. They were so nervous. You know. Little Miss Sharon says Barry Morphew thought they would not find Suzanne either. So true. And it's the same way with Crystal Rogers. You know, Brooks really thought he was going to get away with it, and he didn't. Like the dad doing the interview when they told him they located his missing son. My parents had locked him behind a wall in the basement. Oh, yeah, Sammy. I mean, you know, we've seen a lot of these cases where there has been like a secret room or something that somebody was being held captive in. So, you know, I'm sure law enforcement is really keen to that, especially now, you know, because I mean, how many houses of horror have we seen? And oh, do you seclusion work? Says I use VR to allow me to see my work in depth. That's cool. I like doing virtual reality. I've, you know, messed around to just playing with it. We used to have VR goggles, so. Well, Redo says, I think they have taken clips and questioned creators that are too close, but they won't tell they were questioned. Well, you know, that's a good point, Little Redo. And, you know, I'm sure they would be very quick to, you know, say, oh, I was questioned, because they don't want to tip anybody off to what's really going on. But I have a feeling once the truth comes to light, there's going to be a lot of creators that might just quietly back into the bushes like SF over their fish sticks, you know, because they're not going to have a leg to stand on anymore. Joyce says Craddock asked for a raise. Really? What? He sure did. Oh, yeah, he asked for a raise. He thinks he deserves a raise by sitting on his tush all day long, you know, looking under his desk for Sebastian, pretending like he gives a damn. Adam Forever 21 says the Texas Roadhouse hangout and there that night before he goes missing. Well, they were frequent guests at the Texas Roadhouse. In my opinion, Adam Forever 21, yeah, they were. Oh, see, and that's it, Lana. And, you know, Lana says, Adam, can you imagine how rageful CP was when they didn't allow him home? Well, and, you know, he even said in the interview with Smiley, you know, Sebastian thought he was going to get me kicked out of my own home. You know, I mean, really, do you think Sebastian had that much malice that he wanted you kicked out of the home? How about the fact that he was being abused, he was walking on eggshells, and he wanted it to stop? Because I'm here to tell you, kids want the love and acceptance and validation from their parents. They do. No matter whether they ask, or excuse me, no matter whether they ask for it in a good way as in positive way or in a negative way. For negative um, reaction or positive reaction, right? It's like kids are thirsty for that because they want approval from their parents. And even a step parent, there may be a certain degree of wanting that even more, right? Because parents have typically, Katie, I don't know about you, but an unconditional love, and children can recognize that, and they know that no matter what, their parents are love them, even if they're angry or disappointed in them, for a little while or something, in their actions, something they did, but they're always going to have that love for them, right? And a step parent, sometimes I don't think children know, especially if the step parent is an asshole and doesn't treat them properly. Then the child is going to seek out that acceptance even more and say, because kids don't blame other people the way that adults do, in my opinion. Children internalize things. And again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not any of that, but I've studied a lot of that stuff, reading it and researching it. And in my opinion, from what I've read and looked at and learned, I really believe that children who are not accepted by a parent are seeking out that acceptance. They'll internalize it and they'll say, what can I do to make the parent love me? What can I do to please the parent? And the child should never have to do that. The child should always feel the unconditional love. Like, no matter what I do, I'm going to be loved and accepted. Now, that doesn't mean that they can be a serial killer. Kathy Bowersox, listen up. That doesn't mean they can go off and wreak havoc on everybody else's life and screw everything up. And they're still, oh, come here, baby. No, that's where the line is drawn and accountability comes into play, because love is also accountability. Little Redo says, at this point, Ali is not talking to Keith Jen's side, in my opinion. Well, I don't know what they're doing. To be honest with you, thumb up their ass is my best guess right now. Is what, based on the results. I'm thinking sitting in your office, not doing shit. Lil Redo says, we have talked at length about that. Look how often he mentally abused that child in public. Well, yeah. It's in my opinion, from seeing the Texas Roadhouse video, that Katie enjoyed upsetting Sebastian. No, you can't play with that. No, you can't bring your cell phone with you. No, you can't have any rolls. No, you're in trouble. No. I wonder how many times he was told yes. You're restricted, we're strict. You can't be on the internet. You can't have any friends. You can't go play outside. You're in trouble, you're in trouble, you're in trouble. Until he goes missing, and then they sit there and joke and say, well, he wasn't even in trouble this time. Yeah, well, I have two people that I think should be in trouble. Craddock apparently, allegedly has quite the real estate portfolio. Lana, as well as many, many friends that are in the biz. Seclusion Work says the minute details the under normal conditions are too dangerous and time consuming. The tech depth feeds in the data and we plug in at the chamber, a room equipped for us to move around freely. Oh, okay. For with the VRs, with the virtual reality. Yeah. Carla says, Lana, that's what I heard from Crime Pin Buzz. Yeah. Yeah. And some of them, I believe, are not in his name. or I think his wife does have properties as well, in my opinion. Yeah, he did. He did. He asked for a raise. He thinks he's deserving of that, which also leads me to believe that he is also quite narcissistic, in my opinion. Lil Redo says it has gotten quite quiet. Have you noticed not much talk on Sebastian now? I think it's gotten I think the last week has been very, well, maybe not the last week. There was a lull, but then all of a sudden everybody just came out guns blazing for Sebastian. You had the tips coming through and everything was all a buzz about that. I do think there's been a little bit of a surge in speaking about Sebastian. But I mean, even last night when we were listening to Chris, there was 2 separate occasions where he brought up the threats from Crispy and Katie's camp, and Shady Katie and Crispy's camp, and that says a lot. I mean, for one, they don't want Sebastian to be talked about. They just don't, in my opinion. Lana says, well, Kathy B is a real estate agent and works for her family's new home construction in Gallatin. That's my understanding, Lana, yes. Right, Joyce? I know who can afford 4 houses, right? If they're gifted to you, maybe you just have to pay the property taxes. That's not so bad then, is it? Joyce, what has he done? Does anyone know if he deserves it? Nope. He does not deserve it, in my opinion. No way. No way. Good night, Bo. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. Aw, thanks, Smelly Cat. Yeah, and I mean, I wish I wasn't right. I mean, I hate being right about this kind of stuff, or, I hate to, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I wish it wasn't like this. I do not like even speculating or thinking for 1 second that a mother could do this, let alone a stepfather, or, or any parent that is in a position of trust. Yeah, it's not good. Carla, no, he doesn't need a raise to buy more donuts. Maybe Kathy can make him some. Oh, they're always bringing him stuff, little bribes here and there. I think so too. Lana says, I imagine CB has a lot of influence in the area. I agree. Hey, Town Chat Cafe, good to have you. Yeah, I went on late tonight because I had a storm and I didn't want to get kicked off. So, but it's been a good show. And again, thank you so much to Jules. I know Jules is probably busy working tonight, but I so appreciate the facts from Chris's mouth, because I think that it really helps if they say it, right? And we can listen to it from what they say, then they can't really blame it on us anymore. It's like, well, this is what you said. And so I really appreciate it too. And I'm so looking forward to Jules to coming out with more of what Chris had to say. I mean, it's important. And there's still a lot to analyze in this case. So even with what you said, Little Redo, I think it's anybody that misses the opportunities to talk about, and maybe some other creators have talked about a lot of these subjects that I haven't got to. Again, I'm a newer creator, only a year in. So, oh gosh, it's been a little bit over that now. But about as long as Sebastian's been missing for, and there's a lot of things that I haven't covered, and I still have a lot of things to say about this case. And, we still have to get a hold of Mr. Bongino. So this is a really great way that we can keep Sebastian out in the spotlight, in my opinion, which is, getting a hold of Mr. Bongino and Mr. Patel. It's important to bring awareness and, let everybody know, hey, we're not forgetting about him. We're not. Yeah, the mob crew was getting, oh, little Miss Sharon, did I miss one over here? Oh, I must have missed one over here. Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thanks, little Miss Sharon, for gifting a membership. Well, welcome, Bo, to the Dragon Tribe. Yay. Aw, thanks, little Miss Sharon. That's so sweet of you. I must have missed that one. Thank you so much. How sweet. Oh, Lana, that's a good point. I bet the three-way call that AM was between CP Craddock and Kathy B. Well, we know that Miss Kathy B was out and about that morning at Worsham's. Melissa was out searching at 6:30 a.m. according to her. I mean, so she was out searching before the police. I mean, according to Melissa. That's what she said. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe for 1 minute that Katie and Chris were given proper polygraph tests at all. I don't think they were interrogated properly. I don't think the home was processed as a crime scene properly, because you can't wait 7 days and then go back and say, oh, now we're going to investigate criminally. And as a matter of fact, if the police did in fact give, or we'll just say law enforcement authorities, whether it be the TBI, the FBI, or Sumner County Sheriff's Office, gave Katie a polygraph 2 or 3 days in, then they were absolutely looking at her as a criminal, and they were definitely investigating her as such, as they should be, in my opinion. So that part does lead me to believe, if that is true, now again, this is coming from Chris, but if Katie was polygraphed 2 to 3 days after Sebastian went missing, somebody was side-eyeing her. Somebody wanted to tell if she was lying, because I'm sure they felt very lied to about Sebastian's appearance when it came to the photographs that were given, when it comes to the events that day. I'm sure when they did look at the Texas Roadhouse video, it caused them to pause. I'm sure when they found out about the CPS reports, it caused them to pause. I'm sure when they saw the flashlight video, they probably thought, all right, well, here we go. This is the only activity in the neighborhood. And that's why I think they've kept it close to the vest, Good night, Seclusion Works and Carla. Thank you guys so much for being here. And Seclusion Works, take care, honey. If you need anything, let me know. Sammy G says, earnestly looking and not being able to find us one thing, but not looking and then saying you don't have any evidence, no tips of coming in when you're not answering the phone or taking evidence. Yeah, I agree with that, Sammy. That's exactly right. Well said. I mean, there's an obvious reason why you don't have evidence if you're not taking in any evidence, like carpet samples from Sebastian's room would have been huge, especially taking them from a window. Because who's to say that Sebastian didn't willingly let someone into his bedroom window and then lock it back and then walk out the front door? Right? I mean, Katie said she's, when Katie was asked by Nancy Grace, are you a heavy sleeper? And did you drink or take any medications at night? And Katie said no to all of those. But yet she said to the sleeper part, she says on and off. Sometimes she's a heavy sleeper, sometimes she's not. Whatever the hell that means. I'm willing to bet with what we know about Katie that if she is drunk off her ass, she probably sleeps better. We all do. Let's just be honest. So if she's, drunk and goes to bed, she may sleep through a loud noise or two, right? Especially if she's on the opposite end of the house as Sebastian. I think it's safe to say that any human being could quite possibly sleep through that. Even if you're not drunk, maybe if you're just tired from a long day of activities, you could possibly sleep through, a noise. Or again, if we're to believe, which I don't, but if we are to believe that Sebastian just walked out by himself, I mean, he's going to be quiet about it, right? He's going to try to not make a lot of noise, try to not alert the dogs, because there were 2 dogs in the house, 2 Morkies that are probably yippity yappity, little guys, little girls, whatever they are, little dogs, right? So, but again, if they would have taken carpet samples from Sebastian's room, they could have quite possibly figured out if anybody else who wasn't supposed to be there was there, because there would be foreign items in the carpet fibers. But since they failed to do that, we don't have that evidence. Good night. Hugs to you, Lil Redo. Thanks for being here. I don't think that Sebastian is in another state. No, I don't think so. I mean, I quite possibly thought that maybe there could have been a situation where Chris had taken him and, in a foul play situation, maybe, took him to the Mississippi River or something like that. I mean, that thought has crossed my mind, even though I don't like it. But just in all honesty, it just seems like a Chris Proudfoot move, in my opinion, when we're thinking of foul play, and I hate to think about that. But Lana Lee says Proudfeet had lawyered up early, cannot question either of them. Yeah, I believe they did as well. I believe their family has lawyers on retainer. They seem like that type of a family. Sammy G says, Lady Freedom, did you see my message earlier that Miss Ann wanted you to know that she's here in spirit, but her niece is sick? Oh, okay. No, you know what? I did it, and I saw that there was people that was sending condolences. Thank you so much. With the same ailment as her son, and her niece is in the hospital. Oh, Miss Ann is very worried. Okay, Sammy, I'll make sure to text her. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Yeah, let's say prayers for Miss Ann, guys. That's terrible. I wasn't quite sure what was going on, Tori Banks says, yes, Kathy works at second generation. I know that for a fact. Yeah. And, she's the catcher for all those new builds, Tori, from my understanding. I think they recently moved her into the office, if I'm not mistaken, like within this last year. And yeah, Danny Guy owns that construction company. Yes, he does. In my opinion, allegedly. Yeah. Yeah. And when you work in that field, you have a lot of connections, but usually they're not police officers. I'll tell you that much. I mean, I had to call a police officer one time when I had a squatter in a rental home that I wasn't not expecting to have. Luckily, they weren't there when we walked in, when I walked in to show my clients, but their remnants were there and their probation papers were there. So I was able to, call the police. But that's the only time that I ever encountered police in my, I think maybe we had a couple of clients that were legitimately buying a home for themselves, but it was a family residence, right, where they were buying a home for their wife and kids, right, or their husband and kids, their family. Oh, you're not getting in trouble, Tori. No problem. You don't have to just go back to the bushes. No worries. Yeah, I mean, it's all allegedly in all of our opinions, right? That's all. We're purely speculating, and you know, that's all we can really do. Town Chat Cafe says, "LOL. Maybe we should send them a FedEx with a required signature that has an official letter advising them their tip line is not working properly to please have their IT look into it and fix it." That's a great idea, Town Chat Cafe. I'll tell you what, they need something. They know they know what they're doing. In my opinion, it seems very purposeful at this point. And I wouldn't have said that. Um, get her done. Town Chat. That's right. Sammy says 100. That's too funny. Lana Lee says, yes, she is office manager also. Yeah. So she has access to all of the properties. And that was another really big thing when I found out that Kathy was a realtor. I thought, okay, it's time to really look over her properties, what she has access to, and figure out if possibly Sebastian could have been put in one of those properties, whether he was still with us or not, but as a way to hide him out, right? I didn't see the police really looking into Kathy like they should have, in my opinion, knowing that she had access to those homes, knowing that she could have access to vacant lots and things of that nature. Now, typically, an agent will specialize in one area or another, in new builds, in home listings, working with buyers. Also, if they sell land lots, that's usually their specialty, right? They usually have a niche that they're that they're going after, right? Typically, that doesn't mean that some realtors don't have a very extensive portfolio, or that they haven't worked commercial real estate and also residential. I mean, it really just depends on what you want to learn and how far you want to take your expertise and again, your portfolio. But like I said, in my opinion, it seems like Kathy has a pretty cushy position selling those new builds. Brand spanking new, turnkey, custom, whatever. Some of them are going to be built to the customer's liking. I'm not 100% sure how Danny does all of his dealings. I just know that what I've heard is he isn't someone who likes to play by the rules. He thinks that he's above them. I wonder why. So Sammy G says, Lady Freedom, can you please explain the RV toilet situation? Heard one of the tarot readers talking about evidence disposal through an RV toilet possible. Well, what I know about the RV kind of system, right? The sewer system, right? Is you hook up the RV. Some of them will have tanks, right? And in that, they all have a reserve tank, right? And then you flush that out periodically when it gets full. So there would technically be some remnants of whatever they tried to dispose of if they did search the tank, right? But it also flows out and you flush it all through. And so depending on what all they put down there and what all they use to flush it out could really, maybe, but they would absolutely have to search it. They would absolutely have to do their due diligence in order to find out. But it's a tube that's hooked up and it goes directly into a sewer. And so, it just kind of flushes through. And then, once you're cleared, you kind of know it. In the nicer RVs, it's going to be all like a digital kind of a thing. And the older ones, it's going to be more of a manual type of a thing. But in terms of what Chris Proudfoot was working with that nice fifth wheel, that seemed to be a newer model. I'm sure it was all digital like the one that I have. And again, mine's a pull behind, not a fifth wheel. I don't have a fifth wheel. Town Chat Cafe says, hey y'all, does anyone know if CP ever said who they were talking to face about the spaghetti pancakes that morning? You know, it's been speculated, Town Chat, like who they were talking to. She says they called family to brag. I don't know if it was Katie's side of the family or if it was Chris's side, and maybe they were talking about the whole picking up the niece and bringing her to BJ's to meet with her mother and that sort of thing. They never specified. So in my opinion, or from what I should say, they've never specified from what I've heard. I've only heard them talk about that they did speak to someone to brag about the, spaghetti pancakes. Town Chat Cafe says, I thought I heard I thought I heard through the grapevine that allegedly they were talking to KP's mother. So can anyone confirm that? Yeah, and I've heard that speculated on as well, whether, Frances was involved in that conversation. I do know that it was alleged that she did speak to Sebastian on FaceTime. Again, with these people who have these proclivities toward children and the SA of them, they shouldn't even look at the children on a FaceTime at all. They should never have access to a photo of a child. So if Katie was allowing for that, she's a nasty person, in my opinion. Very, very nasty. I don't care if it's your mother. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's grandma. Nothing. No. Lana says, lady, wasn't there some news about Ellie looking carefully at 2 homes near the construction pond? I did hear about that in the was that in the very beginning? I believe I did hear that in the very beginning. And I think that may have been because of the dogs tracking toward, the retention pond in that nearby construction area. So they very well could have been. But I'd love to get more into the dogs because I think that the Proud Feet lied a lot about the dogs in the sense and what was going on there. But I have to do a lot of searching through different clips. But even in this Nancy Grace interview, there's tons of talk about dogs and how many, and Chris is saying, I know for a fact this and that and the other. And it's like, no, I don't think you know for a fact anything. I think you're lying your ass off. Hey, sweet Sativa, good to see you. I hope you're doing well too, my friend. Thank you. It's just like I said, the reason why I don't think they passed that polygraph test is because of the things that he was saying, how many lies have already been told, and maybe he aggravated the hell out of those people and they just wanted him out of their office. I don't know, but I think it's safe to say that they probably had some help, especially because they didn't want to go to a third party with no skin in the game. They wanted to go to the people that they knew, the people that they could get right on the horn and have a little effing powwow with, so yeah, reeks of corruption coming from this Chicago gal. And anybody that knows Chicago, there's some pretty deep-seated corruption there. Mob ties, you name it. Town Chat Cafe says, because that would be the excuse for the reason for the communication, but in reality, it was a setup, a plan, allegedly, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I am still really under the assumption, I should say, that this was premeditated, pre-planned. Like I said, there's a small part of me that thinks it could have been an accident or it could have been something spur of the moment. But the more and more that we uncover and the longer that this goes on. I just really have a feeling that this was all planned out due to, the sequence of events that were happening over time. Um, and I have, you know, a lot to show you guys in terms of why I believe this. Um, so, but we're kind of just still setting the stage for it, because there's so much information to kind of go over that I want it to kind of flow and make a lot of sense. But it's looking kind of like what Chris Carr allegedly said, bad, so very bad. And I don't like that. It's the last thing that I wanted. Sammy G says on a dispatch they didn't. On the dispatch, didn't they have those dogs there at like 10 a.m.? Chris wasn't even thinking about coming home yet. I don't recall, and maybe you all could help. I mean, I don't recall what time the dogs were actually out and about. I mean, I know that like on day 5, the dogs were definitely out because I remember seeing it in the news, but they very well could have brought them out earlier than that. And I'm trying to think if I saw any dogs, because there was different ones. There was the blue tick, there was the bloodhound, there was Max, the Belgian Malinois. I hope I said that right. Ooh, I love blueberries. I love blueberries so much, Joyce. You're making me want to make a sangria. But yeah, that's a good question, Sammy. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. On the dispatch, they say the dogs at 10 a.m. So the dispatch. Now that you said that, it kind of jogs my memory a little bit. I do remember it being mentioned. I just don't remember that specific time. But yeah, we have a lot to go over still this week, guys, with it being Thursday tomorrow. And then at a certain point, we are going to have a guest up to speak on some of this to kind of help me out with the background. And then some of the images that we're going to go over, there may be a little bit of homework on your end to kind of, especially if you would like to participate in taking, screen grabs and kind of following through with the process. But I'm still tweaking that out. So I don't know if it'll spill into next week yet or not, but I was really hoping to get it this week. But I think there are a lot of other things too that are kind of coming out. And again, I didn't think that I was going to get as much help from other creators as much as talking about Sebastian and bringing some of these things to light, and some of the creators that have worked really, really hard on some of their theories too, like Chris from the Mob Crew being one, but also like Crime Time Buzz. I'm taking a lot of influence there, taking a lot of influence from Bullhorn Betty and a lot of the things. So we're going to keep going over it. And then, like I said, I really need to find a good stopping point and make a whole video about it, and then that way y'all can watch the whole video and we can still be discussing it, but you'll kind of be up to date on the sequence of events from start to finish. But again, poker party details, I would love to know. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to pull in what I want to from that, because I think maybe some of it was deleted, or maybe they took it down because it may have been found out to be some misinformation involved, because we were dealing with someone who is less than credible. But at that time, many of us did not know that. So that's what's going to be difficult there. But if you have a clip, send it to me, ladyfreedomsrawnarratives@gmail.com, no apostrophe necessary. Town Chat Cafe says, so is CC also the one that said where he's at isn't coming back from? And that's where the TBI agent basically repeated what CC said. Since they're both LE connected. I don't remember if he said where he's coming or where he's at. He isn't coming back from. I don't remember if he said that or not. I do remember that it was stated that he said it's bad. It's so bad. But I don't really recall if he said that statement. I know someone was alleged to have said that statement that was in LE, but I don't know if it was Mr. Carr or not. So we'll have to probably look into that one too. But I do remember that Crime Time Buzz broke that, so I'm wondering if that would have been still in her live or not. Lana Lee says you could says you could take it to the bank that Crispy was local on weekends, probably at mom's or his sister's. Well, and that's what people were alleging, and that even they saw his vehicle there. So, I mean, I can definitely see that being true, and then he was, all out of sorts because people were finding that information out, right? But yeah, I think so. And then the geofence, right? Right, Sammy? Because geofencing. Because they geofenced that area, and allegedly satellite images provided that proof, and but yeah, and Chris seems like the kind that is very stubborn too, and I'm not saying I'm stubborn as well. Don't get me wrong. I think Sagittarius is we are just stubborn by nature, but I also believe that he's the type of person that's going to be like, F you think you're going to keep me away from my house, type of a thing. You're not going to get me thrown out of my house, I pay for this effing house. And, I can just hear it now, Sammy G says people are saying that someone said it will be hard to get him back, but I don't know who said that. See, and I'm not sure either, Sammy, thanks. Because I know it was allegedly said by law enforcement. Who said it? I'm not sure. Crispy. Joyce says CP said that he's not coming back. He did say that. Yeah, he did. Yep, he basically vanished. He's poof like a ninja. Houdini, call him Houdini. This case will be studied, and this case, I think he got that right, but more like this case is being studied and is not going to stop being studied until Sebastian comes home, Chris. So that's for you, bud. And Town Chat Cafe says it was a TBI agent, but yeah, we need to find out where that came from. And okay, yeah, I forgot it did come from her. I will have to ask her. Yeah, thanks, Town Chat Cafe. Yeah, because I mean, I'd like to know who said that. I'd like to know who's privy to that information, because people should never think that unless they know something more than we already know, right? Because I can't say definitively whether Sebastian is with us anymore or not. Some of the things that I think that I'm seeing in some of this research, which I do fully intend on sharing with you all, makes me really worried that he might not be. But am I going to get up here and say definitively? No. Because, for one, I'm not the authority on that. And for two, I just really don't know for sure. And, but I'm not going to stop, looking until I find out, and I'll keep digging until I figure it out, and I think a lot of us are very dedicated in that way. And it's very much appreciated. Yeah, exactly, Joyce. We all know. I mean, I keep track of my child still, but she keeps track of me too. Like, we share locations with each other. You know what I mean? Because we're family. That's what families do. Town Chat says, Lady Freedom. So I have a question. Did KP's friend Jay go with them on that fun day, or did she stay at KP's house. See, I'm still not sure about that. I don't think she went with them because she would have been on camera and they would have known. But then again, we've never seen the camera footage from BJ's or from, you know, the fun zone or the indoor amusement park, Strike and Spare. There it is. But so, I mean, it's really hard to tell. That's right. My grandkids are in their beds. Say goodnight to them. Aw. Joyce, that's sweet. Sammy says there's evidence to go both ways, so we don't know. Yeah, what we don't know. Exactly. But we do know what we do know, too. So, you know. All right, guys. Well, it's about to get loud in here, so I better hop off. But I will be working on tomorrow night's live. And like I said, if you guys have anything that you want me to go over or send in, to kind of build up to this, but basically we're going to be building up to these lights, and with this new information coming in about the lights being on in Katie's bedroom, I think that's huge, and I think it's something that we really need to explore further and examine. So all right, everyone. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and I really appreciate you. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you later on tonight. I will be on earlier tonight, I promise. So Pervy is a crisp, gross thought choice. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. You all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you later on tonight.